What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 6 Chapter 181 Advertisement Chapter 181 Although he was already on guard against these people, Uchiha Madara's behavior was very normal, and he didn't let others see that something was wrong. No matter how reluctant he was in his heart, this rescue mission was completed by Chiba Madara. So no matter what the consideration is, even if it's just for the sake of face, people at the top should praise Uchiha Madara. So as soon as he got up the next day, Uchiha Madara got the news that there was an award ceremony that needed to be attended by the live class and Steve would also be there. Obviously, Captain America is a symbol of the American spirit for these people. They hope to launch Captain America to make the people more confident in this war. But Uchiha Madara has no interest at all for this kind of messy activities. Although he promised well, he did not attend the award ceremony at all, but Steve actually made the same choice as Uchiha Madara. But Uchiha Madara was reluctant to attend, just because he knew that these people had different opinions and actually didn't want to be in the limelight at all, so he didn't want to go. However, Steve is a very righteous and kind person, and his reluctance to attend is entirely because Steve has more lofty ideals in his heart and does not want to show off in front of others. So Uchiha Madara, Steve, Buggy and others got together and took a topographical map to study the current situation. According to the information Buggy has been captured for so many days, the group is called Hydra, and they have moved all the weapons to another arsenal. However, there is no specific location of this arsenal on the map at all, and there is no good way now, but every allied country can only search for the headquarters of Hydra in the country. So what do we need to do? Uchiha Madara asked the Admiral directly after looking at the map for a long time. The matter at the Hydra headquarters will be resolved by the Allies, all you have to do is to give John Smith a blow. Admiral 39 said with a serious look. This was an expected task, and Uchiha Madara was not surprised at all, but raised his eyebrows in anticipation. Advertisement. Although Uchiha Madara is the most prestigious one in the army now, it is precisely because of this prestige that the general is very afraid of Uchiha Madara. Therefore, after talking about this task, the Admiral directly put his eyes on Steve, vaguely wanting to support Steve. The plan of these people has already been obtained from the superiors, so Uchiha Madara is not very angry, just like watching a play. Although Steve felt a little embarrassed, but the first level official crushed people to death, he could only nod helplessly. I see, sir, but I need a good team. Steve stood up straight and said with a straight face. The Admiral nodded satisfied with this answer, raised the document in his hand, and replied, of course, we have the best soldiers, 55. Obviously, the general is going to send an elite team to complete the mission with Steve and others, but Uchiha Madara is not optimistic about these people. When Steve was about to open his mouth to agree, Uchiha Madara moved his position calmly and then gently tugged at Steve's sleeve. After feeling the movement in his hand, Steve glanced at Uchiha Madara, and then saw Uchiha Madara shake his head slightly. Although they didn't spend much time together, the two were still very tacit understanding. Steve immediately changed the answer he was about to blurt out, and instead shook his head at the general. This is a very serious matter, and I think I prefer to choose the candidate by ourselves, Steve replied with a serious look. Hearing this, the Admiral swirled back and forth between Steve and Uchiha Madara with suspicious eyes, and both of them were very calm. The Admiral didn't notice any flaws either, he just waved his hand and agreed to the proposal. After the Admiral left, Steve asked Uchiha Madara why he stopped him. We obviously have more suitable people, the people who came back together, they're the people who know Schmidt best, explains 35 Uchiha Madara. It was a very suitable choice, and Steve thought it was the best option, so he decided quickly. But to be honest, no one knows what dangers will be encountered along the way, and Uchiha Madara is not sure if he can bring everyone back safely. Advertisement. So Uchiha Madara is not going to force these people, but put the choice in the hands of these people. Therefore, Uchiha Madara took Steve to bring these people to the tavern, and then directly stated his purpose. After hearing these people, he was shocked. Backquote. We just came back, now want us to go there again? A big man asked with a big laugh while drinking. You are the most suitable candidates, Uchiha Madara said bluntly. This is a non-obvious compliment, after all, they are the most elite troops, but Uchiha Madara chose this group of people, and these people are very happy after hearing it. You can go with you, but you have to meet one of my requirements, said one of them. What request? As long as I can do it. Uchiha Madara nodded very calmly and immediately agreed. Please let us drink, these people said in unison. The characters of these people were very straightforward. Uchiha Madara laughed and agreed to walk aside and let the bartender continue to serve these people. The candidate has been decided, and then it is only necessary to set off to complete the task, but there is still one person who does not know if he will go with him. Buggy was also in this bar. Uchiha Madara took Steve to the side of Buggy and sat down. One person picked up a glass of wine. Ready to go through fire and water with our Captain America? Uchiha Madara asked jokingly. Hearing this, Buggy couldn't help laughing and said, of course, the skinny guy from Brooklyn has grown to such a degree that I have to watch him. 39. After getting the expected answer, a smile appeared on both Uchiha Madara and Steve's faces. Although the current war is not over, it is clear that everyone is currently drunk, and the music in the bar is endless. While everyone was enjoying the rare peaceful atmosphere, Agent Carter suddenly came over, and Steve stood up at a loss. After becoming the captain of the United States, it is rare for Steve to be so overwhelmed. Chapter 182 Harvest Brothers Advertisement. Chapter 182 Harvest Brothers. This change was apparently brought about by Agent Carter, and Uchiha Madara and Buggy looked at each other, both of whom had unknowing smiles on their faces. Howard has prepared some new equipment, you can go and have a look tomorrow. Carter, Uchiha Madara and others nodded and said, but their eyes looked straight at Steve. Sounds good, we'll go in the morning, Steve said with some embarrassment. Carter nodded, then looked at the table of people in the bar who were sitting and drinking together, and then turned his eyes back. It seems that your elite team has been selected, Carter said with a special meaning. These people are really lazy now, and they can't see the style on the battlefield at all, so it is normal for Carter to have doubts. Yeah, they're not bad. Facing this group of people who had no burden at all, Uchiha Madara could only open his eyes and talk nonsense. Don't you like music? Buggy said suddenly, probably feeling a little awkward in the atmosphere. Of course I like it, maybe after the war is over, I'll go to a dance, Carter replied with a smile, looking straight at Steve instead of looking over his shoulder. Steve was also looking at Carter. Uchiha Madara and Buggy looked at each other, and there was still something they didn't understand. Then what are you waiting for? Uchiha Madara said with a smile. The right dance partner, Carter said meaningfully, and then suddenly turned around to leave. Don't forget the time tomorrow, Captain, Carter said as she walked out. I will, ma'am, and will be on time tomorrow, Steve replied, sonorously. After Carter left, Uchiha Madara and Buggy glanced at each other, both of whom looked at Steve with a smile on their faces, and their faces were joking. Looks like we're all a little transparent now, Uchiha Madara said jokingly. Advertisement, yeah, now the feng shui turns and it's me, it's really uncomfortable, Buggy also echoed. Facing the fight between the two friends, Steve showed a slightly shy smile on his face, then reached out and patted Uchiha Madara and Buggy on the shoulders. Don't worry too much, maybe he still has a few good girlfriends. After speaking, Steve quickly left. Unexpectedly, Steve would have such a counterattack. Uchiha Madara and Buggy looked at each other with incredible light in their eyes. However, these little episodes were just some of the concoctions in the serious and tense military life, and everyone returned to normal after dawn. The next morning, Uchiha Madara quickly took Steve and Buggy to Howard's lab. The equipment to get the bosom is very complete, including uniforms and shields, but Uchiha Madara has always been grateful for this kind of tights. After looking around, Steve suddenly locked his gaze on a circular shield and pulled it out. Wait, this thing is not finished yet, Howard said to Steve with some excitement. However, Steve obviously loves this shield very much, he has already put it in his hand, and began to look at the shield carefully. It can nullify the attack, is a very good defensive weapon, and can also attack, Howard explained on the side. Then why not equip everyone? Steve fondled the shield and asked. This material is extremely rare on Earth, and it is already a unique orphan, Howard said helplessly. At this time, Carter suddenly came in and started urging Steve, as if Steve had something else to do. Seeing Steve's performance, he was very surprised. He suddenly raised the shield in his hand and began to ask, AFBB, for Kate's opinion. However, the atmosphere between the two was a little weird, and Carter picked up the gun on the table without saying a word, and started shooting Steve frantically. It looks good, at least it can block bullets. Carter glanced at Steve coldly, and then left very noble and glamorous. This scene is really shocking, everyone just stared blankly at the background of Carter's departure, and did not recover for a long time. Advertisement. After he woke up, Steve quickly chased after him. At this time, Uchiha Madara had time to chat with Howard about his thoughts. He didn't have any idea about the defensive items in the live broadcast class, instead he picked up a gun beside him curiously. The structure of this gun is very light, but the essence is concentrated. According to Howard's explanation, this gun can continuously attack. This is a modification based on the weapons you brought back, but I don't know what energy they used, so... Howard's tone was full of regret. So how long can this gun last? Uchiha Madara asked casually, playing with the weapon in his hand. I have concentrated all the energy together and should be able to support it for a while, Howard said with some pride. Hearing this, Uchiha Madara was a little surprised. Those people didn't ask Howard to keep the energy for research. Thinking so in his heart, Uchiha Madara unconsciously told his inner doubts, and Howard couldn't help laughing when he heard this. Isn't the weapon meant to be taken out? They can order me not to move. Howard raised his chin and said smugly. There was not much communication with Howard, so Uchiha Madara didn't know how interesting a person Howard was, so he couldn't help but glance at Howard with admiration. You are not what I imagined, Uchiha Madara said with a smile. Really, shouldn't you be disappointed? Howard raised his brows pretending to be surprised, and asked in a very exaggerated tone. Uchiha Madara has always been very tolerant of people who are interested in him. Facing Howard's expression, Uchiha Madara couldn't help but smile. It should be said that it exceeded my expectations, Uchiha Madara said in a very pleasant tone. Sometimes people really need to talk about fate, although Howard seems to be a very unassuming and complacent person. However, Uchiha Madara admired Howard very much, and the two soon became good brothers who could talk about everything. Obviously, Howard of Uchiha Madara is also very appreciative. If he has something to do, he invites Uchiha Madara to his laboratory, and he can choose the weapon that is in hand. But even Steve has never enjoyed the treatment. Facing such treatment, Uchiha Madara behaved very calmly and treated it with a normal heart. Chapter 183 Clean the Base Advertisement. Chapter 183 Clean the Base. This is a special treatment that many people can't ask for, but Uchiha Madara's flattering attitude makes people look at it even more. Everyone thinks that Uchiha Madara is definitely not a simple character. There are many rumors about Uchiha Madara in the army, but Uchiha Madara just smiled. Because he knew that he and these people were not the same people at all, and that he would leave after the war ended, Uchiha Madara didn't want to waste his time. It's a war-torn front line outside, but here at the headquarters, it's very safe. Although life in the barracks is very stable, the mission of soldiers requires fighting on the battlefield. After all the horses were gathered, Uchiha Madara went to Steve and said that he could go now. While everyone else wanted to shape Steve into an American spirit, it did grow a lot towards Steve. But at the end of the day, Steve is still the skinny lad from Brooklyn, and Steve hasn't changed in the face of Uchiha Madara and Buggy. After receiving the signal from Uchiha Madara, Steve immediately went to the general and reported his itinerary. After getting the approval, everyone no longer wastes time, and immediately rectifies the good things and sets off. Although Hydra's whereabouts are very strange, no one knows exactly where they hide their stronghold. But the selected group of people are all people who have dealt with Hydra, and there are only so many resources now. If Hydra wants to continue to grow and develop, it is impossible to lock itself in the deep mountains and forests that no one can reach. Advertisement. Although everyone's running in was not very good at first, and Hydra was indeed very successful in hiding, it was difficult to find it. However, under the leadership of Uchiha Madara, these people also learned some useful reconnaissance techniques, and soon discovered a stronghold of Hydra. It is estimated that this stronghold is not a very important place, and the previous Red Skull did not appear at all. Although they are also heavily guarded, the pair of men and horses led by Uchiha Madara are all battle-hardened and have long been prepared. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, they launched a sneak attack, and these people were caught off guard, and they quickly destroyed the entire stronghold. These people in Hydra are simply brainwashed, and they are not willing to surrender at all, and even bite the poison hidden in their mouths directly after being caught. In the beginning, Uchiha Madara also wanted to grab a few mouths so that he could ask about the true purpose of Hydra. But seeing these people so determined, Uchiha Madara lost interest. Then he directly explained to his subordinates, there is no need to leave any prisoners, anyway, these people will kill themselves in the end. After some melee, the base was basically destroyed by bullets and artillery, leaving nothing useful. After Uchiha Madara led the people to sweep, he picked out some useful supplies and left with satisfaction. After having a successful experience, everything in the future becomes very easy, and the whole team is getting better and better. Along the way, I kept looking for the stronghold of Hydra, and they were very successful in destroying the stronghold of Hydra, and there were no major casualties. This is what Uchiha Madara is most proud of. After all, he brought these people together, and Uchiha Madara also wants to bring them back safely. Advertisement. Although the Uchiha Madara people also destroyed many Hydra bases along the way, it was just like what the Hydra people who met before said. If one head is cut off, a second head will grow, and Hydra simply seems to keep multiplying. Although so many bases have been destroyed, Hydra's movement is not small at all, and it does not mean to disappear. In the final analysis, the most important thing is to find Hydra's headquarters. Only by destroying Hydra's headquarters can this big trouble be completely solved. The general said before that the people of the allied countries would do their best to find Hydra's headquarters in their own country, but it has been so long, and there is no good news. Therefore, Uchiha Madara did not trust the strength of the allies, and in the end, he had to roll up his sleeves and do it himself. After a long journey, Uchiha Madara and his men entered a forest covered with snow and ice. The forest was covered by a thick fog, so it looked hazy, and everyone had to act very cautiously. 0. For flowers. Just as everyone moved forward cautiously, Uchiha suddenly felt something moving behind him, picked up a stone and threw it diagonally behind. It turned out that Uchiha Madara's senses were still very sharp. A person hiding on a branch was directly beaten by Uchiha Madara. However, this man fell from the tree like a scout, and a blast occurred not far away. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara found it in time, otherwise when he stepped into that area, it is estimated that everyone would be buried in the blast. Because the actions of Uchiha Madara and others were too successful, perhaps in order to stabilize the morale of the army, the headquarters actually sent someone to record this battle after another. Point 0. Seeing the war correspondent who came to shoot the documentary, Uchiha Madara rolled his eyes in some unsightly manner. He had no idea what these upper-level people were thinking. But there is only one more burden left and right. Uchiha Madara is also lazy to argue about something, just follow this person. But because of the presence of this cameraman, Uchiha Madara is not too pushy. Under normal circumstances, it is to convey his meaning to Steve, and let Steve come forward to announce the news, which can be regarded as satisfying the wishes of those people. Although Uchiha Madara led the others along the way with good news, only those who participated in the battle knew the difficulties. I don't know how Hydra did it, but their weapons and equipment are indeed very advanced, and they are at least several years ahead of the allies. Therefore, Uchiha Madara didn't want to fight hard and solve things with his brain, and there was absolutely no need for his soldiers to die in vain. After arriving at a Hydra stronghold, Uchiha Madara waved at the person behind him, and immediately someone carefully ran to the road. Then the man used the blind spot of sight to lie on the ground and installed the explosive bomb in his hand on the bottom of the tank. When the tank drove into the base, Uchiha Embo immediately pressed the button in his hand, and a small mushroom cloud bee immediately appeared not far away. Chapter 183 Clean the Base Advertisement. Chapter 183 Clean the Base. This is a special treatment that many people can't ask for, but Uchiha Madara's flattering attitude makes people look at it even more. Everyone thinks that Uchiha Madara is definitely not a simple character. There are many rumors about Uchiha Madara in the army, but Uchiha Madara just smiled. Because he knew that he and these people were not the same people at all, and that he would leave after the war ended, Uchiha Madara didn't want to waste his time. It's a war-torn front line outside, but here at the headquarters, it's very safe. Although life in the barracks is very stable, the mission of soldiers requires fighting on the battlefield. After all the horses were gathered, Uchiha Madara went to Steve and said that he could go now. While everyone else wanted to shape Steve into an American spirit, it did grow a lot towards Steve. But at the end of the day, Steve is still the skinny lad from Brooklyn, and Steve hasn't changed in the face of Uchiha Madara and Buggy. After receiving the signal from Uchiha Madara, Steve immediately went to the general and reported his itinerary. After getting the approval, everyone no longer wastes time, and immediately rectifies the good things and sets off. Although Hydra's whereabouts are very strange, no one knows exactly where they hide their stronghold. But the selected group of people are all people who have dealt with Hydra, and there are only so many resources now. If Hydra wants to continue to grow and develop, it is impossible to lock itself in the deep mountains and forests that no one can reach. Advertisement. This video may soon be banned. Watch before it's deleted. Quantum Code. Although everyone's running in was not very good at first, and Hydra was indeed very successful in hiding, it was difficult to find it. However, under the leadership of Uchiha Madara, these people also learned some useful reconnaissance techniques, and soon discovered a stronghold of Hydra. It is estimated that this stronghold is not a very important place, and the previous Red Skull did not appear at all. Although they are also heavily guarded, the pair of men and horses led by Uchiha Madara are all battle-hardened and have long been prepared. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, they launched a sneak attack, and these people were caught off guard, and they quickly destroyed the entire stronghold. These people in Hydra are simply brainwashed, and they are not willing to surrender at all, and even bite the poison hidden in their mouths directly after being caught. In the beginning, Uchiha Madara also wanted to grab a few mouths so that he could ask about the true purpose of Hydra. But seeing these people so determined, Uchiha Madara lost interest. Then he directly explained to his subordinates, there is no need to leave any prisoners, anyway, these people will kill themselves in the end. After some melee, the base was basically destroyed by bullets and artillery, leaving nothing useful. After Uchiha Madara led the people to sweep, he picked out some useful supplies and left with satisfaction. After having a successful experience, everything in the future becomes very easy, and the whole team is getting better and better. Along the way, I kept looking for the stronghold of Hydra, and they were very successful in destroying the stronghold of Hydra, and there were no major casualties. This is what Uchiha Madara is most proud of. After all, he brought these people together, and Uchiha Madara also wants to bring them back safely. Advertisement. Although the Uchiha Madara people also destroyed many Hydra bases along the way, it was just like what the Hydra people who met before said. If one head is cut off, a second head will grow, and Hydra simply seems to keep multiplying. Although so many bases have been destroyed, Hydra's movement is not small at all, and it does not mean to disappear. In the final analysis, the most important thing is to find Hydra's headquarters. Only by destroying Hydra's headquarters can this big trouble be completely solved. The general said before that the people of the allied countries would do their best to find Hydra's headquarters in their own country, but it has been so long, and there is no good news. Therefore, Uchiha Madara did not trust the strength of the allies, and in the end, he had to roll up his sleeves and do it himself. After a long journey, Uchiha Madara and his men entered a forest covered with snow and ice. The forest was covered by a thick fog, so it looked hazy, and everyone had to act very cautiously. 0. For flowers. Just as everyone moved forward cautiously, Uchiha suddenly felt something moving behind him, picked up a stone and threw it diagonally behind. It turned out that Uchiha Madara's senses were still very sharp. A person hiding on a branch was directly beaten by Uchiha Madara. However, this man fell from the tree like a scout, and a blast occurred not far away. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara found it in time, otherwise when he stepped into that area, it is estimated that everyone would be buried in the blast. Because the actions of Uchiha Madara and others were too successful, perhaps in order to stabilize the morale of the army, the headquarters actually sent someone to record this battle after another. Point 0. Seeing the war correspondent who came to shoot the documentary, Uchiha Madara rolled his eyes in some unsightly manner. He had no idea what these upper-level people were thinking. But there is only one more burden left and right, Uchiha Madara is also lazy to argue about something, just follow this person. But because of the presence of this cameraman, Uchiha Madara is not too pushy. Under normal circumstances, it is to convey his meaning to Steve, and let Steve come forward to announce the news, which can be regarded as satisfying the wishes of those people. Although Uchiha Madara led the others along the way with good news, only those who participated in the battle knew the difficulties. I don't know how Hydra did it, but their weapons and equipment are indeed very advanced, and they are at least several years ahead of the allies. Therefore, Uchiha Madara didn't want to fight hard and solve things with his brain, and there was absolutely no need for his soldiers to die in vain. After arriving at a Hydra stronghold, Uchiha Madara waved at the person behind him, and immediately someone carefully ran to the road. Then the man used the blind spot of sight to lie on the ground and installed the explosive bomb in his hand on the bottom of the tank. When the tank drove into the base, Uchiha Embo immediately pressed the button in his hand, and a small mushroom cloud bee immediately appeared not far away. Chapter 184 Operation Train Advertisement. Chapter 184 Operation Train. Because there was no defense, the gate of this stronghold was immediately blown up by a bomb, and Uchiha Madara waved to the people behind him. One by one, the division of labor began immediately, covering Uchiha Madara and leading the others into the stronghold, and the cleaning operation was successful again. Although the journey was very difficult and the environment was very harsh, Uchiha Madara still had a very rich harvest. At least Uchiha Madara got the news from Hydra, and they seem to have a person named Dr. Zola, who is extremely important to Hydra. According to Uchiha Madara's speculation, it is estimated that this strange and very advanced weapon used by Hydra was developed by this person. Regardless of whether Uchiha Madara's guess is correct or not, the importance of Dr. Zola to Hydra is beyond doubt, and Uchiha Madara immediately made a decision. This is precisely because of the importance of Dr. Zola, so Hydra is very secretive about the whereabouts of Dr. Zola. Uchiha Madara also went through a very difficult examination and got some news from the mouths of some people who had just entered Hydra. It is estimated that this will be a very difficult operation, but everyone has come to this point. If this thing is not completed, everyone will not be reconciled. So Uchiha Madara used the information obtained from Hydra to determine the location, and then set off immediately with his own people. Everyone walked to the top of a snow-capped mountain. There was a train track underneath, and Dr. Zola might pass by this train. Jumping onto the train from here, if you are a little careless, it is estimated that you will be waiting for the ending. Remember the speeder I forced you to play before? Buddy asked, staring at the tracks below. Of course, I vomited at the time. Although his tone was relatively relaxed, Steve answered with a frown. Haha, maybe this is revenge. Uchiha Madara replied in a very calm tone after hearing the conversation between the two. Advertisement. Hearing Uchiha Madara's words, everyone burst into laughter, and the somewhat heavy atmosphere was relieved a lot. While Uchiha Madara was talking with the other two, the member in charge of communication behind him also gained a lot and received information from Hydra. You're right, Dr. Zola will appear on the train, and the people of Hydra asked him to open the throttle. The black man reported the news to Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara nodded at the big man before saying to the others, wherever he goes, he must be a very important person to Hydra. Everyone also agreed with Uchiha Madara's statement very much, and they all took action to find their positions, and the soldiers with binoculars also quickly reported the current situation. It's like they are rushing to reincarnate now, we have to act quickly. The soldier said in a very urgent tone. After taking a look at the telescope in the soldier's hand, Uchiha Madara immediately made a decision, hung his hand on the rope, and walked to the front. Each of us only has 10 seconds, and if we miss this time, we will be killed by the train. Uchiha Madara said in a very serious tone. Everyone knew this was no joke, so they all nodded towards Uchiha Madara very seriously. Seeing that everyone was ready, Uchiha Madara took the lead and slid down. It turned out that Uchiha Madara was a very good commander. He arranged the timing just right, and landed on the train very steadily. Steve and Buggy followed closely behind Uchiha Madara and arranged for a few people to watch the wind from above, and Uchiha Madara walked directly to the front car. Opening the door, Uchiha Madara walked in eagerly. Buggy was the last to come in, not forgetting to close the door. After entering the train, Uchiha Madara frowned unconsciously. For no other reason, the train was too quiet. This should not be the case. After all, Dr. Zola should be a very important existence to Hydra. I don't know why no heavy troops were sent to protect Dr. Zola. No matter how many thoughts he had in his heart, Uchiha Madara took the lead and cautiously walked towards the inside of the carriage. Buggy walked at the end with his own weapon, and was very alert to the movement around him. Advertisement. But when Uchiha Madara just walked through a door, there was a sudden movement behind him, and Steve and Buggy were actually locked out. The car that was originally very silent also moved immediately, and a robot-like thing appeared in the car. Although he was very concerned about Steve and Buggy behind him, Uchiha Madara had to deal with the robot in front of him first. The robot's attack power is very strong, but its movements are a bit clumsy. After dodging a few attacks, Uchiha Madara immediately took the opportunity to jump out. He grabbed the handle on the top of the carriage, then slid in front of the robot and kicked the robot's head, but the robot fell to the ground. Because the body is too bulky, the robot did not get up for a long time, and Uchiha Madara grabbed the weapon in the robot's hand. A shot was fired at that door. The lethality of this weapon was unquestionable, and the door was quickly broken. When Uchiha Madara ran past, he found that there was only Steve in this car, and Buggy was in the back car. Looking at the situation over there through the car door, Uchiha Madara found that the bullets in Buggy's hand seemed to have been used up, and he could only hide in the corner in embarrassment. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara had already made preparations. He took a gun from Hydra, hit the lock quickly, and kicked the door open early in the morning. 1.1 Steve also aimed at the timing behind Uchiha Madara, threw the shield in his hand, and then knocked the soldier to the ground. After the danger information was lifted, Buggy also took up from the corner and calmly patted the dust on his body. I'm about to beat him, Buggy said with some embarrassment. Well, I see. Uchiha Madara also reached out and touched Buggy's fist and replied calmly. Just as everyone was talking, Uchiha Madara was very keenly aware of the movement behind him and immediately turned around. Then he found that another robot appeared at the door, and aimed the cannon in his hand in the direction of Uchiha Madara and others. It was obviously too late to escape now, and Steve quickly blocked the front with the shield in his hand. Chapter 185 Buggy Falls Advertisement. Chapter 185 Buggy Falls. The material of this shield is indeed very scarce, and it also proves that Howard did not lie at all, and the beam hit the shield and did not break the shield. However, the impact of this attack was very large, and Steve was directly hit behind and fell to the ground. Although I am very worried about Steve's current situation, to be honest, no distraction is allowed on the battlefield. Leave me alone, get rid of him, Steve shouted very eagerly. Uchiha Madara also understood the current situation very well. Without saying a word, he raised his weapon and hit the robot. However, this robot is indeed very rough and thick, and the bullet hit the robot without shaking it at all. Even this robot has the energy to raise its own weapon and fight back. Continuing like this will not do him any good. Uchiha Madara immediately picked up Steve's shield. Then he smashed it towards the robot. The robot was obviously stronger than the shield, and the robot was quickly solved. However, there is not only such a robot in the whole O5 carriages. After solving one, there are still a steady stream of robots appearing. These robots are indeed very difficult to deal with. After all, they seem to feel no pain, and they keep attacking as long as they can stand up. The strength of robots should not be underestimated, but Uchiha Madara's strength is not weak, and one person can face several robots. Steve and Buggy cooperated with each other and solved the rushing robot very tacitly. After seeing that there was not as much fuss as he imagined, Uchiha Madara was relieved and began to concentrate on solving the robots that rushed in front of him. After a hard fight, he finally succeeded in solving the robot around him. Uchiha Madara just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Steve's exclamation behind him, and Uchiha Madara quickly turned his head and looked over. Advertisement. Then I saw that Steve and Buggy were directly hit by the robot without noticing. Now the two of them can only hold the door of the train and support them. Although the robots around him were still lingering, they still stood up swayingly, wanting to give the final blow. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara hurriedly rushed over, killing the robots next to him with 3 or 2 hits. Now the situation is too critical. Uchiha Madara can't care about other things, and quickly stretched out his hand, trying to pull Steve and Buggy down. Steve was fine. He pulled the train door tightly, and Uchiha Madara pulled Steve down with a little effort. However, the situation on Buggy's side is more complicated, probably because it was too hasty when it fell out, and Buggy didn't react, and was thrown out directly. Now Buggy was just pulling on a crumbling rail above the train, and Uchiha Madara stepped on the door of the train and leaned out most of the body, reaching out to Buggy. "Quick, Buggy, take my hand." It was cold and windy outside, and Uchiha Madara's voice was also intermittent, looking at Buggy with great concern and said. After seeing Uchiha Madara, Buggy also tried very hard to twist his body and put his hand on Uchiha Madara's. However, it has been supported for too long outside, and Buggy is estimated to have lost support, and his hands are gradually losing strength. In the end, it was only a few millimeters away, but these few millimeters were like a moat that could never be crossed. The railings, which had been crumbling since the beginning, were immediately broken under the blow of the cold wind. Then Uchiha Madara could only watch as Buggy fell into the bottomless canyon. "No!" Uchiha Madara shouted in a very painful voice. But now it's too late. Even though Uchiha Madara has tried his best, he still can't hold Buggy from falling. Steve also paid attention to the situation here with great concern, and immediately saw what happened, and some fell to the ground in a daze. For Uchiha Madara, Buggy was a very good friend and a brother who delivered the back on the battlefield. Advertisement for Steve, Buggy is even more important. Steve and Bajin have been dependent on each other for so many years. The relationship between two people is not only a friend to describe, but a family-like existence. Now watching his most important friend fall into the canyon right in front of him, Steve's inner pain can be imagined. In fact, Uchiha Madara may not have less pain in his heart than Steve, but he is still on the battlefield. No matter how sad he is in his heart, he must cheer up. So Uchiha Madara just closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened his eyes again, he had regained his usual composure. Then Uchiha Madara walked up to Steve and held out a hand. "Get up, we can't let Buggy sacrifice in vain, they will all pay the price," Uchiha Madara said through gritted teeth. Although Steve's sad face was already pale, but after hearing 473 Uchiha Madara's words, he stood up with his arms very strong. "You're right, Hydra and I are at odds, and we must make them pay for their actions today," Steve said with red eyes. After having known each other for so long, the Steve that Uchiha Madara met has always been very gentle. With such a furious look, this is the first time Uchiha Madara has met. But for Steve, venting might be the best thing to do. So when the soldiers in black uniforms came around again, Uchiha Madara directly handed them all over to Steve. Probably really stimulated, Steve's actions have never been so ruthless. After finishing these people, Uchiha Madara took the lead with his own weapon and walked to the front. No matter what, Dr. Zora must be caught today. When they were walking in the carriage, Uchiha Madara and Steve looked like they were killing God and killing Buddha, and they showed no mercy at all. Basically, the people who rushed up were dealt with mercilessly by Uchiha Madara and Steve, and finally reached the front of the car. The door on this car is very heavy, and it is impossible to open it manually. Uchiha Madara grabbed a robot and slammed the door open with the weapon in the robot's hand. Chapter 186 Capture the Doctor Alive Advertisement. Chapter 186 Capture the Doctor Alive. This time, Uchiha Madara was not disappointed. After the door was completely opened by Uchiha Madara, a very sophisticated room appeared in front of him. There's a lot of outdated gear in this room, and there's a guy sitting at the front manipulating it. Behind the sitting person stood a very short and ugly person, and Uchiha Madara only felt that this person's face was very familiar. After mobilizing his memory bank, Uchiha Madara immediately recalled that this was the wretched man he had met with the red skull before. There are no other creatures in this room except these two people. According to Uchiha Madara's judgment, Dr. Zola should be this ugly man. Seeing Uchiha Madara and Steve coming here, the two were very flustered, but their shock was far from over. With a loud bang, a hole was opened at the top of the room, and a man from Uchiha Madara's squad jumped down with a gun. The man who had been sitting all this time couldn't sit still when he saw this scene, took out a gun from his leg, and aimed it at Uchiha Madara. But looking at the appearance of these two people, you can tell that they must be sitting in the laboratory at ordinary times, and they are completely helpless people. Uchiha Madara winked at Steve, and Steve immediately understood what Uchiha Madara meant and made some movements, attracting the attention of both of them. Then Uchiha Madara made another gesture to his own member, who immediately circled behind the man with the gun and punched him in the arm. This punch didn't hold back any strength, so this person couldn't hold the gun in his hand immediately. Uchiha seized the opportunity in the middle of the night and rushed forward, subduing Dr. Zola and this engineer. Although Uchiha Madara now wants to give these two people cramps and bones to relieve his hatred, Dr. Zola is obviously very important to Hydra. Dr. Zola should also master a lot of Hydra's secrets, so Uchiha Madara forcibly suppressed his inner anger. Advertisement. After calming down, Uchiha Madara asked Steve to take out the rope and tied the two together. The members of Hydra that were caught before were all very tough, and they would rather commit suicide than become prisoners, revealing the secrets of Hydra. But Dr. Zola obviously did not have such arrogance. After being caught, he squatted down to the ground and began to beg for mercy. And said that he could tell all the news he knew, and glanced at Dr. Zola who was squatting on the ground and shivering. Uchiha Madara couldn't help showing a disdainful expression. However, the members of Hydra that I have met so many times are all very insidious and cunning. Therefore, although Dr. Zola was very timid and afraid, Uchiha Madara did not relax his vigilance at all. While Dr. Zola kept begging for mercy, Uchiha Madara slowly walked in front of Dr. Zola. Immediately after Dr. Zora's frightened eyes, Uchiha Madara stretched out his right hand and grabbed Dr. Zora's chin. Seeing Uchiha Madara reaching out to him, Dr. Zora thought he had no hope of living, and some of the appointed ones closed their eyes. However, Uchiha Madara is not as irrational as Dr. Zola thought. Uchiha Madara is still very clear about what is the most important thing. Therefore, everyone could only hear a click, and Uchiha Madara removed Dr. Zola's chin to prevent Dr. Zola from biting the poison and committing suicide. Now that people have caught the train, there is no need to continue driving. After studying the joysticks, Uchiha Madara finally found the end button and stopped the train in this icy world. After everything was settled, Uchiha Madara handed the two over to another member and walked over to Steve himself. When fighting before, Steve was very calm as if nothing had happened. But now that everything has been dealt with, Steve has become lost again, just staring blankly at the cliff outside. Advertisement. But in the face of such a situation, Uchiha Madara didn't even know how to speak, and all comfort seemed so pale in the face of such a thing. This is a living person, the best friend of himself and Steve, and watching his friend die in front of him is something that can drive a person crazy. In the end, Uchiha Madara just put his hand on Steve's shoulder, hoping to give Steve some silent comfort and the courage to continue living. Backquote. Mission is over, we should go back, Uchiha Madara said without wavering. Yeah, the mission is over, we should go back, Steve replied in a very dry voice. Uchiha Madara would have no doubts that Steve would have burst into tears if it weren't for the responsibilities of Captain America and his military uniform. If you live to see people die, you will see corpses. When the matter at hand is resolved, I will take you down to find Buggy. Uchiha Madara took a deep breath and said. In fact, Steve also knew that falling from such a high canyon was almost impossible to survive. Uchiha Madara's words were just to comfort himself. But there was still a warm feeling in Steve's heart, at least there were people who remembered Buggy as much as he did. After the sadness was over, Steve regained his usual calmness, shook his head slightly towards Uchiha Madara. How is Zhao Hao? And then began to arrange the next thing. Looking at Steve's tall and straight back as always, Uchiha Madara sighed silently, not knowing whether to be happy or sad. Steve finally grew up and became a qualified commander, but this was in exchange for Buggy's death. But soon Uchiha Madara also restrained all emotions and went to help Steve solve this matter together. Although Dr. Zola has now been captured alive, this mission can only be regarded as the final end if Dr. Zola is truly brought back to the base safely. Hydra lost a very important talent, but it is impossible to let it go, so the way back is not safe, everyone must cheer up. Therefore, Uchiha Madara has given everyone a vaccination early, and repeatedly stressed that we must pay attention to any troubles along the way. Chapter 187 Interrogation Advertisement Chapter 187 Interrogation. Although Hydra's power has been greatly weakened by Uchiha Madara and other sweeping operations, Hydra is still lingering. In particular, Dr. Zola was captured alive by Uchiha Madara and others, and Hydra naturally couldn't sit still after receiving the news. On the way back with the others, Uchiha Madara was constantly being hunted by Hydra. And Hydra and this group of people are just like dead men, they're completely immortal, and they don't care about any cost at all. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara has already reminded others that everyone was very alert along the way, and even during breaks, there were people who were constantly guarding in shifts. Therefore, although Hydra's endless appearance makes people feel a little irritable, everyone found it very timely and did not let Hydra's strategy succeed. In particular, Uchiha Bo and Steve turned their grief into strength along the way. If they wanted to hunt down Uchiha Madara and other Hydras, no one came out alive. After experiencing the dangerous pursuit along the way, Uchiha Madara finally successfully arrived at the camp with Dr. Zola. But along the way, except for Uchiha Madara and Steve, everyone else was extremely embarrassed, and the man who had been caught with Zola before became a burden. Obviously, the 473 that this man knows must be more from Dr. Zola, and it is estimated that it has no particular effect. And Hydra is indeed a very ruthless organization, for fear that the news on his side will leak out. Therefore, on the way to kill the Uchiha Madara people, Hydra simply did not do it again and again. At first, Hydra was targeting Uchiha Madara and others, and wanted to snatch Dr. Zola and the man back together. It's a pity that in the end it was found that the odds were not very good, so Hydra thought to solve both of them together, only the dead would keep the secret. Along the way, we have to take 2 prisoners, not only to fight with Hydra, but also to prevent any accidents between these 2 people. Everyone is really exhausted. Advertisement therefore, Uchiha Madara made a decision on the spot. Except for Dr. Zora, that person was of no use and was naturally abandoned in the middle. And Uchiha Madara didn't let go of anything that could be used, and this person was also used as a bait, attracting Hydra's men to other places. Without the people chasing them later, everyone returned to the base, AFBB, without any danger along the way, and when they returned to the base, they were naturally treated like heroes. As for Dr. Zola, there are special people to interrogate, trying to take out the secret in Dr. Zola's mouth. Uchiha Madara is not very interested in these follow-up developments, after all, this is not within Uchiha Madara's responsibilities. But obviously Uchiha Madara simply overestimated the abilities of other people, so many people can't even make Dr. Zola open his mouth. So while the upper echelons really want to weaken Uchiha Madara's influence and let everyone see Captain America. However, under such circumstances, these people still licked their cheeks and came to the Uchiha class, hoping that Uchiha Madara could take over this task. Since it has been decided to leave here after the war, Uchiha Madara does not want to have too much involvement with these people. But thinking of Buggy who fell into the canyon, Uchiha Madara couldn't harden his heart anyway, after all. Dr. Zola was bought by Buggy with his life. So after rejecting the Admiral's invitation to personally come over several times, Uchiha Madara still took the task and went to the prison after some preparations. The importance of Dr. Zola is self-evident. In his hands, the master holds many secrets that only high-level Hydra executives know. Therefore, even if he became a prisoner, he did not suffer any setbacks. When Uchiha Madara entered, he found that Dr. Zola was very leisurely and was alone in a small room. He probably felt that he was the one who had the upper hand in the current negotiation, so after seeing Uchiha Madara coming in, Dr. Zola was not as flustered as before. Zola even did it down and gave Uchiha Madara a very calm smile. However, Dr. Zola's psychological change has long been understood by Uchiha Madara. After seeing this smile, Uchiha Madara did not have any special reaction. Advertisement Uchiha Madara very calmly walked to the only table and sat down, and then brought out the food that had already been prepared. Do you want to eat? You must have been hungry for a long time, right? Uchiha Madara asked very carelessly. Not knowing what Uchiha Madara was trying to do, Dr. Zora just shook his head warily. Uchiha Madara didn't care when he was rejected, and added the food to his mouth very calmly. Since you don't want to eat it, let's take a look at this thing. Uchiha Madara smiled and brought a thin piece of paper to Dr. Zola. In view of the information you have provided, we are going to repatriate you to Switzerland, and I have sent a telegram to the Washington headquarters. Uchiha Madara said with a smile. At first, Dr. Zola was calm. After seeing this piece of paper, the expression on his face finally changed, but he quickly calmed down. Uchiha Madara said in a slightly playful tone. Let me guess, do you think Hydra has intercepted this information now? Impossible. Schmidt won't believe you. Dr. Zola said in a very firm tone, seeming to believe in Schmidt very much. But Uchiha Madara could tell at a glance that Dr. Zola was just holding on, but he didn't want to let himself get the upper hand in this game. Uchiha Madara just watched with a smile on Dr. Zora's self-deception. Does it make sense to deceive yourself like this? Whether he believes it or not, you will definitely die. Uchiha Madara said in a very casual tone. As Uchiha Madara's voice fell, the smile that Dr. Zora had been insisting on finally couldn't hold anymore, and some of them collapsed on the chair in a decadent manner, and his face became extremely pale. You know, you have become his obstacle, you know his most secret. Uchiha Madara raised an eyebrow and said calmly. And the person you killed in this operation is my best friend with Captain America, and I don't know what will happen to you. Uchiha Madara glanced at Dr. Zora as he spoke, then shook his head with a sigh. Seeing that the conversation was almost over, Uchiha Madara finally gave Dr. Zola a chance to choose, protect yourself, or protect Schmidt. Chapter 188 Comfort Advertisement Chapter 188 Comfort. The right to choose has been in the hands of Dr. Zola. After asking that sentence, Uchiha Madara stopped talking and just enjoyed the food very calmly. The atmosphere in the small room fell silent for a while, but in the end Dr. Zola made an unexpected choice. Schmidt has always believed that he is following the footsteps of the gods, and he will only be satisfied if he gets the whole world, Dr. Zola said slowly. Hearing Dr. Zola's voice, Uchiha Madara raised his head again, and listened to these words with interest, as if he were listening to a story. So you know he's crazy, right? Uchiha Madara asked very calmly. Faced with such a statement, Dr. Zola was not surprised at all, and replied very calmly, of course, but all this is no longer important. 35. Why? Uchiha Madara asked very calmly. Hearing this question, a smug smile even appeared on Dr. Zola's face. Because he can do it, Dr. Zola replied with great certainty. So what is his purpose? Uchiha Madara stopped eating and asked impatiently. His goal, of course, is the whole world. Dr. Zora approached Uchiha Madara and replied in a very strange tone. No matter what, Dr. Zola was finally willing to speak, and it was indeed from Dr. Zola's mouth that he got a lot of news about Hydra. Uchiha Madara was just the one who was in charge of the interrogation. As for what to do with the things he got, it was none of Uchiha Madara's business. After completing his task, Uchiha Madara left the interrogation room and walked into a dilapidated tavern. The tavern was pitch dark and there was no trace of anyone. Uchiha Madara walked inside and saw Steve sitting alone in front of a small table. Although he heard the footsteps behind him, Steve didn't look back, just poured the wine on his own. Dr. Earth said that the serum will not only change the muscles, but also the cells, which means that I will not be drunk at all, Steve said as he drank. Advertisement: sure, your metabolism is 4 times that of a normal person, but Dr. Erkin seems to think that's a disadvantage. Uchiha Madara walked across from Steve and sat down. In fact, Uchiha Madara and Steve are not talkative people. They don't think that when they are together, because there will always be one person who will liven up the atmosphere. But after there were only 2 people left, Uchiha Madara and Steve, the atmosphere was very obvious, and the 2 of them were speechless and didn't know what to say. Steve just kept drinking and didn't want to say anything at all. In the end, Uchiha Madara couldn't sit still, grabbed the wine bottle in Steve's hand, and began to keep pouring wine into his mouth. The 2 of them were almost turned into alcoholics, 1 bottle for you and 1 for me, and the surrounding area was soon filled with empty wine bottles. However, the metabolism of the 2 of them is very strong, so even if they drink so much wine, they do not feel any intoxication. This wine just got boring the more I drank it. In the end, Uchiha Madara and Steve were very consistent, and the wine bottle in his hand could be smashed to the ground. Although it was not stated explicitly, both Uchiha Madara and Steve knew exactly what it was for. The atmosphere in the tavern suddenly fell silent, as if no one existed at all. Generally, the 2 of them were speechless to each other. In the end, Uchiha Madara couldn't stand the dull atmosphere and helplessly sighed and said, "It's not your fault." "How could this not be my fault? You were there at the time, it was my fault," Steve said in a very low voice. Of course, Uchiha Madara was very aware of what had happened at the time, stroked his forehead with some pain, and then propped his hand on the wine table. "It's not just your fault, I was there and I couldn't save him," Uchiha Madara said in a dry voice. Hearing this, Steve looked up at Uchiha Madara, but shook his head slowly. "It has nothing to do with you, he was obviously with me at the time, I didn't take good care of him, you faced so many villains at that time," Steve whispered. So the voice was too low, and Uchiha Madara listened very carefully to hear clearly what Steve said. Advertisement 0. For Flowers faced with such an answer, Uchiha Madara didn't know what to say. Obviously, Steve has entered a misunderstanding and took all the faults on himself. But thinking about the importance of Buggy to Steve, it seems understandable that Steve would have such a reaction. In fact, in the final analysis, Steve needs to think clearly about this matter, and Uchiha is also very sad in his heart, and he doesn't know how to comfort him. In the end, Uchiha Madara could only sigh helplessly and then change the subject. Then change the way of thinking. "No matter what, we have to believe in Buggy. This is an honor for soldiers," Uchiha Madara said slowly. "For Buggy, we are his companions who can go through fire and water, and he certainly doesn't want us to blame ourselves like this," Uchiha Madara reassured. When I said this, I don't know if I was comforting Steve, or I was comforting Uchiha Madara himself. I don't know if Steve listened to it, but he finally stopped drinking alcohol to relieve his worries, and his eyes became much clearer. After a moment of silence, Steve sat up straight, looked at Uchiha Madara seriously and said, "I must kill Schmidt." Uchiha Madara is not surprised by Steve's idea at all, and even agrees very much, which is what Uchiha Madara wants to do now. "You're not alone, and that's what I'm trying to do right now," Uchiha Madara replied in very cold words. "As long as the Hydras are not killed, I will never stop," Steve said in a very firm tone. Whatever the reason, fortunately, Steve finally got back on his feet. Uchiha Madara is also very happy to see that after losing a good friend, another good friend is not at a loss. And Steve's remarks can be considered to be on the heart of Uchiha Madara, and this is what Uchiha Madara wants to do next, not just to complete the task. Uchiha Madara has such an idea in his heart, that Buggy must not be sacrificed in vain, and all those who participated in this matter must pay the price. Chapter 189 Convening a Meeting Advertisement Chapter 189 Convening a Meeting. Although both of them were very happy, Uchiha Madara and Steve are now very awake. Now that the war is not over, even if they hate Hydra in their hearts, it is impossible for both of them to leave the army and go to Hydra alone to seek revenge. This night has been the biggest indulgence of Uchiha Madara and Steve. After all, every commander needs to keep a clear head on the way to march and fight. No matter what thoughts they had in their hearts, Uchiha Madara and Steve just sat in the tavern with a calm look all night. When the sun rose the next day, Uchiha Madara and Steve returned to the army as if nothing had happened. There are still many things waiting for Uchiha Madara to solve, and Schmidt has not been completely defeated by 473, he still wants to make a comeback. And according to the information obtained from Dr. Zola, as well as some things snatched from the Hydra base, it can already be estimated that Schmidt's energy is huge. Schmidt is a lunatic and should be thrown into a lunatic asylum. He actually thinks he is a god and wants to blow up half the world, the Admiral said angrily. Then the Admiral walked over to the map, pointed his finger at the area of the United States, and said, "And he's trying to use the United States as the center and use the United States to start his own grand plan." 55. At the beginning, everyone didn't take Hydra's approach very seriously, because everyone had never seen the power of Hydra at all. But as Schmidt's ambitions continue to expand and put into action, these people finally understand that Schmidt is more crazy than they thought. Coupled with the confession from Dr. Zola, now basically everyone is in danger. The admiral called all the generals together and passed on the news, hoping that everyone could work together to solve the current confidant. Just as the admiral was talking, Howard walked in, pulled out a chair and sat down. Schmidt's energy is beyond our imagination. As long as he crosses the Atlantic Ocean, he can wipe out the entire East Blue Shore in an hour. 33 Howard said to the crowd. Although Howard usually looks very out of place, in fact Howard is a very reliable weapons expert. Advertisement. Since Howard said these words so solemnly, it means that he has gone through in-depth research. Everyone fell silent. After all, the development trend of things has exceeded everyone's expectations, and it seems to have developed in an uncontrollable direction. Everyone looked at each other, no one dared to speak first at this time, and finally Uchiha Madara couldn't stand it any longer and asked, "How much time is left?" Hearing Uchiha Madara's words, the admiral sighed, and then picked up the documents sorted out in his hands. According to the new friend, there are less than 24 hours left. The admiral's tone was also somewhat helpless. However, according to Uchiha Madara's judgment, all this development is only inevitable, and everyone did not pay attention to Hydra at the beginning. Everyone thought that Hydra was just a non-governmental organization, and there was no storm at all, but the truth gave everyone a loud slap. The weapons on Hydra's side are much more advanced than those on the Allied side, and Hydra's ambitions are really too big. Schmidt doesn't care about the lives of other people at all, he just wants to do his own thing as he pleases. However, things have developed to this point, and it is meaningless to say these things. The most important thing is to feel the solution of Schmidt. So Uchiha Madara quickly got to the point and started asking where Schmidt was now. Although the interrogation started by Dr. Zola was the responsibility of the live broadcast class, Uchiha Madara was only responsible for prying open Dr. Zola's mouth, and there was no further question about the latter. This is also the picture that the upper-level leaders want to see. These people hope that Uchiha Madara can become the sharpest blade in their hands and be invincible. But they don't want Uchiha Madara to know too many core secrets. For them, Uchiha Madara is not completely their own. After all, Uchiha Madara's appearance is too strange, even if Buggy made a reasonable identity for Uchiha Madara. But other people are very fooled. Which of the above people is not sperm can be found out after a little check. At that time, Buggy and the others didn't have such great ability, they could really hide from the sky. Advertisement. The most important thing is that everything about Uchiha Madara in the United States can be found, but the previous experience is blank, so the upper-level people will be so vigilant. Regarding this matter, Uchiha Madara has no desire to explain at all, and just keeps doing his own thing. Uchiha Madara didn't bother to inquire about matters beyond the scope of his authority, and was completely unwilling. It is this attitude of indifference to fame and fortune that gradually makes the upper class relax some vigilance, but the real core content will not be told to Uchiha Madara. But in any case, even if it was just to keep the ordinary soldiers from chilling, Uchiha Madara was treated very solemnly in the army. So Uchiha Madara can participate in these relatively confidential actions, and can express his views in the meeting. So where is Schmidt now, did you ask? Uchiha Madara asked calmly after recovering the scattered thoughts. Fortunately, after Uchiha opened Dr. Zola's mouth, the next interrogation went very smoothly. The admiral took out a picture and showed it in front of everyone before he began to answer Uchiha Madara's questions. At Hydra's last base, the base is 500 feet below the Alps. The admiral passed down the picture in his hand and asked the 1.1 family to study it carefully. After taking the picture, Uchiha Madara looked at the location recorded above with a serious look. Steve also took a few other pictures and studied them carefully. Just as Uchiha Madara and Steve carefully looked at the pictures, others raised a lot of questions. It's 500 feet underground, so how are we going to get there? Yeah, do you have to knock on the door to get in? The team members who acted together before couldn't wait to express their opinions, and the expressions on their faces were full of embarrassment. In fact, the moment he took the picture, Uchiha Madara had already started thinking about the countermeasures to be taken. After hearing this, Uchiha Madara had an epiphany. That's right, let's just go in, Uchiha Madara said calmly. Chapter 190 The Last Base Advertisement. Chapter 190 The Last Base. There is something inexplicable about this sentence. Basically, no one present could understand the meaning of Uchiha Madara. Hearing that, he just looked at Uchiha Madara curiously. But Uchiha Madara just smiled and sat in his seat very calmly, not wanting to explain too much at all. In the end, Steve and Howard were the first to react and gave strong support to Uchiha Madara's decision. Although other people probably didn't understand what Uchiha Madara meant, but in order not to show their ignorance, these people still insisted and began to applaud. As for the previously selected members, they are very convinced of every decision made by Uchiha Madara and have not raised any objections. In the end, Uchiha Madara was in charge of this matter. Naturally, the final action had been discussed. Uchiha Madara stood up very directly and left the conference room. Steve and Howard naturally followed up with the members of the team and began to listen to Uchiha Madara's detailed arrangements for the next action. This is a battle that concerns everyone, so no mistakes are allowed, and the level of danger is unprecedented. Before telling his plans, Uchiha Madara looked around at his members and gave them one last chance to choose. Think clearly, I can't guarantee that everyone can come back safely, this is your last chance to choose. Uchiha Madara said word by word. No one likes to hear these ominous words before they even start a fight, but Uchiha Madara just put the truth in front of everyone. These remarks did have some blows to the enthusiasm of the members, but everyone quickly recovered and expressed their determination. What do you say? Of course we are going to follow you. That's right, you don't want to leave us behind. Yes, yes, this is a big credit, and everyone who sees it has a share. Everyone gathered around and said in a very excited voice, without the slightest fear in their tone. Advertisement. Hearing this, a very slight smile appeared on Uchiha Madara's face, and then he looked around, as if he wanted to remember everyone's faces in his mind. But all the warmth was but a moment, and soon Uchiha Madara returned to his former calm. After getting everyone's assurance, Uchiha Madara was relieved. It was a choice made by everyone. Then Uchiha Madara called people to his side, and everyone formed a circle and surrounded Uchiha Madara. Knowing that this action is really too important, it is related to the life and death of everyone, so the expressions on everyone's faces are very serious, and they listen seriously. After explaining all the next actions carefully, Uchiha Madara's mouth was already dry, and then he glanced at everyone and asked if he understood. Everyone was honed on the battlefield. Of course, they had fully understood Uchiha Madara's battle plan and nodded very seriously. It's good to understand, you should go back to prepare now, but there is a tough battle to be fought next. Uchiha Madara drove everyone back. All the things that should be explained have been explained, but Uchiha Madara still watched the backs of everyone leaving with some melancholy. After all, no matter how well prepared the front is, the situation on the battlefield is still changing rapidly, and in the final analysis, it still depends on the-spot command. No matter how worried I was in my heart, time passed quickly, and it was time to prepare to leave soon. Heavy weapons and equipment are just a burden to the Uchiha Madara team, so the Uchiha Madara pair set off completely lightly. Schmidt is indeed a complete lunatic, and after his ambitions have been discovered by others, he no longer hides it at all. So Uchiha Madara was madly pursued by Schmidt along the way, and Hydra was completely reckless this time. So when they arrived in the Alps, everyone was extremely tired, and Uchiha Madara immediately made a decision to let everyone rest in place for the night. However, Hydra was also very vigilant. The next day, when Uchiha Madara led the others close to the Hydra base, they began to attack with weapons. Although there were not many people brought out, there were not many people, but in the end, only Uchiha Madara and Steve were the only ones who stood out. Advertisement. After crossing the wall in front, there are many trucks guarding there, and many people from Hydra jumped from the truck. Also, Uchiha Madara and Steve cooperated very well. Uchiha Madara started to shoot frantically with weapons in both hands. Steve held his shield to resist the attacks from these people, and then Uchiha Madara pressed the accelerator button at the right moment. Then, the motorcycle that Uchiha Madara rode over rushed towards the iron gate at the entrance and hit the iron gate, causing a huge explosion. After the iron gate was blown open, it was natural to enter the final base. Uchiha Madara took the lead and ran over there, and Steve followed closely behind Uchiha Madara. But just when Uchiha Madara was about to step into the door 473, he suddenly realized that there was no movement behind him. When he turned his head to look, Uchiha Madara saw several robots holding high-speed guns. These robots surrounded Steve in the middle, and the flames from the anti-aircraft guns formed a fence, making Steve unable to move at all. For such a situation, Steve naturally couldn't resist, and quickly put down the weapon in his hand. Immediately afterwards, a large number of robots ran out and surrounded Steve. Immediately afterward, the robots turned their attention to Uchiha Madara, and the meaning was self-evident. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara had no other choice. After all, Steve's life was still in the hands of these people. And although the situation is very critical now, Uchiha Madara also thought about it a little. With these people leading their own past, it is obvious that the possibility of seeing Schmidt is the greatest. And Uchiha Madara not only wants to solve Schmidt, but also wants to know where Schmidt's advanced weapons come from. Dr. Zola is only responsible for weapon research and development. If there is no raw material, no matter how talented he is, there is no place to use it. So after thinking a little about the pros and cons, Uchiha Madara made a decision right away. Chapter 191 Advertisement. Chapter 191 It looks like Uchiha Madara has gone through a lot of mental activity, but it's just a matter of seconds. After thinking about it clearly, Uchiha Madara threw the weapon in his hand and raised his hands to indicate that he did not intend to attack. After the robots glanced at each other, they sent one person to approach Uchiha Madara cautiously, and then kicked Uchiha Madara's weapon far away. Immediately afterwards, the robot walked in front of Uchiha Madara and began to search, taking away everything that could be a weapon. After confirming that neither Uchiha Madara nor Steve was capable of combat, these robots put Uchiha Madara and Steve together, and then approached cautiously. Immediately afterwards, some ordinary soldiers in black uniforms appeared, tying the hands of Uchiha Madara and Steve together. The four people supported Uchiha Madara and Steve, and finally passed a dark corridor and brought Uchiha Madara and Steve to the underground base. After seeing Uchiha Madara and Steve, Schmidt walked over with a smug look. Arrogance may not be a unique feature of Americans, but I have to say that you interpret it better than others, Schmidt said sarcastically. Immediately afterwards, Schmidt put his eyes on Uchiha Madara, without concealing his pride. Isn't this our invincible Mr. Invincible? Let me guess, I should have been implicated by this arrogant guy today. 99. Schmidt's words did not conceal his malice at all, and at this time, he still wanted to provoke the relationship between Uchiha Madara and Steve. See, even people like you can't do things, aren't you, Captain? Schmidt said sarcastically. Or what does Mr. Erkin say differently? In the face of the villain's successful Schmidt, Uchiha Madara just smiled coldly, and didn't want to pay attention to this kind of person at all. Advertisement, he said you were crazy. Steve, who has always been very gentle and polite, said mercilessly and sarcastically. Dr. Erkins is the one who transformed Steve and Schmidt. I don't know if it is for this reason, Schmidt always has a comparison mentality for Steve. Hearing this, Schmidt, who had always had a smug smile on his face, changed his expression for a moment, but Schmidt quickly concealed his gaffe. Really? That's because he is jealous of my talent and wants to deny what belongs to me, but he gave you everything, Schmidt said jealously. Immediately afterwards, Schmidt made no secret of his maliciousness and asked with disdain. So, what's special about you? Hearing this, Uchiha Madara, who had been standing on the side with an expressionless and calm face, couldn't help laughing. At the end of the day, Schmidt is just jealous of what Steve has right now. Of course not, I'm still the ordinary guy from Brooklyn, Steve said with a smile. But for Schmidt, this smile is like showing off his success, so the expression on Schmidt's face suddenly changed. Schmidt couldn't maintain his usual calm style any longer, so he rushed up and punched Steve's abdomen one after another. Although Steve has strengthened his body through serum, it does not mean that Steve is really invulnerable. Schmidt's attack these few times was completely ruthless, so Steve fell to the ground in some embarrassment, and a trace of blood soon overflowed from the corner of his mouth. But even at this time, Steve didn't admit defeat, and still said with disdain, "You know, I have a lot of time to spend with you." What he said was very handsome, but the wound on his body made Steve look a little embarrassed. In fact, Uchiha Madara was already very angry when Schmidt shot Steve. It's just that in order not to destroy the overall plan, Uchiha Madara forcibly suppressed his inner anger, and just stood there calmly, without any movement. But Schmidt has been constantly challenging Uchiha Madara's ones, and when Steve's voice fell, Schmidt suddenly raised the gun in his hand. Advertisement with the gun pointed at Steve, Schmidt said with a nasty smile on his face. Of course I know, but unfortunately, I'm running out of patience. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara's eyes suddenly darkened, and he had already made a decision in his heart. That is, Uchiha Madara is not ready to endure anymore even if the whole plan is destroyed if the people he arranged for him have not come yet. When Uchiha Madara was about to start, there was some movement outside the window, and a smile appeared on the corner of Uchiha Madara's mouth unconsciously. Aiming at the right moment, Uchiha Madara broke free from the restraints of the two people next to him, and then kicked Schmidt's hand. Although Schmidt looked very majestic, he was still a very timid person in his heart. After realizing that something was wrong, he didn't even want the weapon, and ran away in a hurry. At this time, the window was also kicked open, and the people Uchiha Madara had already arranged jumped in from the window and subdued several Hydra people in the room. This was actually arranged by Uchiha Madara early in the morning, and that was the meaning of what he said at the meeting earlier. Uchiha Madara brought a group of people and pretended to break through from the front, attracting Schmidt's attention. Others took advantage of the moment when Uchiha Madara was drawn away by the firepower and used ropes from other mountains to enter this last base. So far this plan is obviously very successful. Uchiha Madara and Steve have attracted all the attention of Hydra. However, the current situation is indeed a bit chaotic, and Uchiha Madara still has to pay attention to Steve's situation, so he let Hydra escape. After helping Steve up, Uchiha Madara threw Steve's shield directly, and Steve picked up the shield and went to track Schmidt. And Uchiha Madara picked up the walkie-talkie and started to arrange the next thing. After all, this is Schmidt's last base. So Uchiha Madara can't really just foolishly with such a few people to break in. There is actually a large army behind them, but because the large army has a large number of people, it moves relatively slowly. Uchiha Madara is a forerunner. After successfully entering the final base, Uchiha Madara naturally wants to spread the news and let the troops come in quickly. Chapter 192 Schmidt escapes. Advertisement. Chapter 192 Schmidt escapes. After taking the walkie-talkie in his hands, Uchiha hurriedly told Agent Carter about the situation here, and then handed the walkie-talkie into his hands. And Uchiha Madara himself went after Steve and Schmidt. After all, this was in Schmidt's lair, and Uchiha Madara was also afraid that something would happen to Steve. When Uchiha Madara was running outside, Agent Carter also rushed in with someone and started shooting frantically. Now everyone doesn't care about getting their hands on the line, and just wants to quickly deal with the people of Hydra and completely destroy this evil organization. However, the people of Hydra have really been completely brainwashed. Even if their own nest has been rushed in by others, they are still stubbornly resisting. Cut off one head, and we can grow a second one. Long live Hydra, these uniformed people shouted wildly. Every move of Hydra's people is too crazy, and it is this kind of desperate madness that makes the soldiers who rushed in from the outside hesitate to move. You must know that once the military morale is disturbed on the battlefield, this is a very serious matter, so Uchiha Madara immediately stopped his pace and first stabilized the military morale. No matter how many heads there are, we will cut off 477 when one grows, and everyone will rush to me. Uchiha Madara raised his voice and shouted in very firm words. Uchiha Madara has always been invincible, and she is simply a god in the army. Everyone has extraordinary admiration for Uchiha Madara. Hearing Uchiha Madara's words, everyone cheered up again, although the weapons were indeed inferior to Hydra's side, but everyone did not give up. The weapons on Hydra's side don't know what raw materials are used. As long as they are hit by their artillery shells, they will be completely decomposed and become a puff of smoke. And Uchiha Madara uses ordinary bullets, so hitting Hydra can only cause physical damage. It is precisely because of the disparity in weapons that although the number of Hydra is relatively small, it is still inseparable from the people on Uchiha Madara's side. But no matter what, the crowd strategy was very effective, and the people on Uchiha Madara's side gradually gained the upper hand. Advertisement. After seeing that the situation on this side was gradually stabilizing, Uchiha Madara didn't stay here any longer, and immediately went to find the trace of Steve. When Uchiha Madara saw Steve, he found that Steve was blocked in the corner by a robot with a flamethrower and could not escape at all. And Schmidt has disappeared. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara launched an attack on the robot without hesitation. After being attacked by bullets, the robot caught fire and fell directly to the ground. After solving the robot that threatened him, Steve finally ran out of the corner, and at this time Agent Carter also rushed here with people. But the most important thing now is to catch Schmidt, so Uchiha Madara didn't communicate too much with Agent Carter and left here in a hurry. It wasn't clear in which direction Schmidt was running, so Uchiha Madara followed Steve. After running for a while, I finally couldn't help but ask. Looking at Steve's confident and calm appearance before, Uchiha Madara thought that Steve had already made up his mind, but he didn't expect that Steve was also a headless fly. In this case, there is nothing to do, and Uchiha Madara can only search frantically in the base with Steve. But Uchiha Madara was a little bit better than Steve, and started thinking about what Schmidt might be doing now. Now that the final base has been discovered, Uchiha Madara can already be sure that Schmidt will definitely leave by himself, based on the previous experience surrounding the Hydra base. For someone like Schmidt, his own survival was more important to him than anything else, and giving up a base was no big deal. AFBB, after a little thought, Uchiha Madara had already thought of where Schmidt might go. Now that the base has been occupied by people on Uchiha Madara's side, Schmidt can only use an airplane to go out. After thinking about this, Uchiha Madara immediately dragged Steve and ran to the place where the plane was parked. Advertisement: the area of the parking lot is unusually empty, and there are many Hydra people with weapons guarding. Seeing the two aliens Uchiha Madara and Steve, these people aimed their weapons at Uchiha Madara and Steve without saying a word. But such a long training period is not without any effect. Uchiha Madara and Steve cooperated very well and avoided the attacks of these people directly. The two of them didn't pay attention to these sweepers at all, and Ishin just wanted to catch the big fish Schmidt. Although Uchiha Madara and Steve have worked very hard, there are times when the physical limits simply cannot be surpassed. Even if the plane has not yet taken off, it is only in the stage of preparation ahead, but this is not something that a person's two legs can catch up with. So even though Uchiha Madara and Steve have tried their best, they are still a long way from the plane in front, and the distance is still getting longer. In the end, Steve was a little desperate, and the pace of chasing the plane gradually slowed down. Uchiha Madara is constantly searching around with his eyes, hoping to see something useful. But in this parking lot, apart from the plane that Schmidt drove away, there were no tools, only a group of members of Hydra, who were coveting them. Just when Uchiha Madara thought that he could only find another chance next time, the sound of an engine suddenly came from behind him. It was followed by a roadster with a very sleek profile, just drove over and stopped in front of Uchiha Madara and Steve. It was the Admiral who brought Agent Carter to drive the sports car over, but now that time was waiting for no one. Uchiha Madara didn't have time to say anything, and jumped on the sports car directly. After Uchiha Madara and Steve jumped on it, the Admiral immediately started the car and drove to the maximum speed, gradually closing the distance with the plane. However, the sports car can't catch up with the plane after all, and now the plane has gradually raised its head, and it is obviously about to take off completely. After the plane took off, it was too late. Uchiha made a decision immediately after estimating the distance, and jumped to the front of the car first. Steve also followed behind Uchiha Madara with his shield, but Agent Carter looked at Steve with a worried expression. Chapter 193 Advertisement Chapter 193 Uchiha Madara is also aware of the eccentric atmosphere between these two people, so instead of doing half a dozen Mandarin ducks, he gave a few seconds to say goodbye. After all, this is on the battlefield, and the love between children and children is still inferior to the mission that he shoulders. So Steve didn't do anything, just took a deep look at Agent Carter and then turned his head away. Hearing no movement behind him, Uchiha Madara knew that Steve had made a goodbye, and then, no longer hesitated. Then Uchiha Madara seized the opportunity and jumped up in the last few seconds before the plane took off, finally jumping on the plane. Steve also followed. But although it has been successfully scraped onto the plane, it does not mean that everything is fine, and it is necessary to find a way to sneak into the interior of the plane. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara and Steve had a lot of contact with this military aircraft, and immediately found an entrance, and then sneaked in directly. Because the internal structure of the plane was unclear, Uchiha Madara and Steve went in and walked into a dark room. Entering an unfamiliar room, the first reaction was to look at what was in the room. Uchiha Madara glanced down through the faintest light, and Uchiha Madara, who has always been very calm, couldn't help but have a surprised expression on her face. The bottom of this room is actually filled with missiles one after another, and the missiles are still engraved with the names of the cities, and there are Chicago, Washington, and New York as far as the eye can see. Thinking of the idea that Schmidt wanted to destroy half of the world that Dr. Zola had heard before, Uchiha Madara shuddered. Obviously these missiles are the weapons that Schmidt used to achieve his goals. If these missiles were launched, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, Steve also walked to Uchiha Madara's side, staring at the missiles below, and suddenly there was the sound of metal collision. Awakened by this sound, Uchiha Madara and Steve immediately woke up, and then found a suitable place to hide their figure. When Uchiha Madara and Steve were just hiding, a few men in black came in from somewhere with weapons. Advertisement: Uchiha Madara and Steve looked at each other and kicked the men in black. However, these men in black were obviously prepared, and took out the daggers hidden on their bodies. However, the number of men in black is relatively large. When Uchiha Madara and Steve were entangled with the men in black, the other men in black ran away directly from here. Then these men in black ran to the helicopters in the shape of missiles, trying to get into these small missile helicopters. At a glance, he knew what the hell these people were planning. Uchiha Madara kicked the man in black beside him, and then rushed towards the missile helicopters. But at this time, a man in black jumped on the missile with New York written on it, and the helicopter was ready to take off. Having already reached this point, Uchiha Madara couldn't care less and jumped directly to the top of the helicopter. These people in black were really crazy. They knew what the consequences would be, but another black man jumped over. The man in black wanted to push Uchiha Madara off the missile helicopter. After some entanglement, Uchiha Madara kicked the man in black with one kick. Uchiha Madara returned to the top of the helicopter and kept knocking on the outer protective shell of the helicopter with his weapon, and finally knocked out a hole. Then Uchiha Madara put his hand in to open the helicopter, and pressed the button of the parachute. The pilot was ejected directly. After gaining control of the helicopter, Uchiha Madara jumped in and drove the helicopter back to the original plane. After stopping, Uchiha Madara jumped out of the helicopter directly, and then began to search for the location of the aircraft control room. Schmidt must not have left. The Emperor did not bear the painstaking efforts. After a lot of hard work, Uchiha Madara finally succeeded in finding the position of the control room. But the room was very empty, and no one seemed to be there. Even so, Uchiha Madara was very careful, taking small steps toward the front seat. When he was about to approach the seat, Uchiha Madara heard very faint footsteps behind him, and if he didn't listen carefully, he would have ignored it. Advertisement. For flowers, but Uchiha Madara immediately squatted down and turned around. It turned out that Schmidt was holding the gun in his hand and attacking the position where Uchiha Madara was originally standing. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara's reaction is fast enough. If it is a little slower for a second or two, it will be too late. If this speed of light hits Uchiha Madara, then Uchiha Madara will be the same as those warriors who went there before, and even the bones will not be found. You haven't given up yet. This matter has nothing to do with you, does it? You are not American, Schmidt said maliciously. Faced with such a lunatic, Uchiha Madara didn't feel like he had anything to say to him. Although Schmidt is speaking very nicely now, it seems that all the goals are on the American soil. But once Schmidt's plan succeeds, Schmidt's ambition will continue to expand and eventually will devour the world. So Uchiha Madara kept talking to Schmidt and immediately rushed up when Schmidt was not paying attention. After the weapon was knocked down, Uchiha Madara, the way of Schmidt, didn't have any heart at all, and he still wanted to be the enemy of himself, and his eyes were almost as red as his skin. Immediately afterwards, Schmidt didn't care about 3721 and started to fight with Uchiha Madara directly. Although Schmidt doesn't seem to have much ability, it must be known that Schmidt is also a strengthened person transformed by serum injection, so the force value is actually not low. However, Uchiha Madara's fighting skills have also been practiced again and again, so Schmidt did not occupy the top score, and the two were inseparable. After being optimistic about the timing, Uchiha Madara hooked Schmidt's neck directly with his hands, and then dragged Schmidt backwards. However, Schmidt was also very experienced. He squatted down and turned around, and he broke free from Uchiha Madara's shackles. But Uchiha Madara couldn't just watch Schmidt escape, so he rushed forward and punched him, throwing Schmidt directly on the chair. Chapter 194 Invitation. Advertisement. Chapter 194 Invitation. There are too many buttons attached to the back of this chair, all of which are used to operate this plane. Schmidt's back didn't know what button was touched, and the whole plane began to bump up very violently. Although it was inside, Uchiha Madara clearly felt that the plane had changed its original route and started to rush down. Once the plane crashed, everyone on the plane would be doomed, so Uchiha Madara didn't care anymore and hurried to the buttons. Although he hated Uchiha Madara very much in his heart, and wished that Uchiha Madara was cramped, Schmidt also knew the priorities. So Schmidt rarely came to interfere with Uchiha Madara, who was seriously studying the buttons. 477. However, the model of this plane is not the same as the plane of the allied countries, and I don't know what these buttons mean. Uchiha Wave may have pressed it casually according to his own intuition. I don't know which button was triggered, and the plane started to lose control. Then you can feel the obvious weightlessness inside the plane, just like in outer space. Everything started to float, and Uchiha Madara and Schmidt couldn't dodge and couldn't touch the ground at all. Damn, what the hell is this? Facing such a situation, Uchiha Madara couldn't help but scold it in a low voice. Although Schmidt is very crazy, he wants to destroy half of the world, but the premise is that he can live. In the face of such a situation, Schmidt was still very desperate, trying to break free from Uchiha Madara, the rope tied to his hand, and then stumbled to the front of the seat. After all, this is Schmidt's plane, so Schmidt is very clear about how to control the plane, and it is easy to calm down the plane. Advertisement. After the plane stabilized, Schmidt took out a gun from the side of the seat, and then carefully searched the room, hoping to find the figure of Uchiha Madara. But Uchiha Madara is not a fool either, so naturally he can't just rush forward in a foolish way. He has already hidden himself very well. Schmidt moved cautiously and shouted loudly, "You have a chance to become a god, why not cooperate with me?" Hearing these words, Uchiha Madara couldn't help sneering. It seemed that Schmidt was still immersed in the beautiful dream of being a god and couldn't extricate himself. I don't know if it was for what reason, maybe it was because he wanted to strengthen his own power. The more Schmidt said, the more he felt that his proposal was very good. So the expression on Schmidt's face was no longer as hateful as before. Instead, he wanted to keep recruiting Uchiha Madara, hoping that Uchiha Madara could join Hydra. "Come to my side, I will take you to become a god together, then we will be the only two masters in the world," Schmidt said in a very seductive voice. In order to convince Uchiha Madara, Schmidt began to draw a beautiful blueprint for Uchiha Madara after the destruction of half the world. After hearing this chatter, Uchiha Madara finally got a little impatient, and interrupted. Half the world is destroyed, what else can you control? For Uchiha Madara's conversation, Schmidt was very happy, thinking that this was the gradual softening of Uchiha Madara's attitude. So Schmidt stopped caring about Uchiha Madara's tone, and instead explained it seriously for Uchiha Madara. I am a god. Under my rule, only the believers of God can continue to survive, Schmidt said in a very middle-level tone. Immediately afterwards, Schmidt turned around and talked about those people in the big city with disdain, and he didn't hide his disdain in his words. I'm not killing innocent people. People in those big cities always believe in science, they think they are superior, and they don't believe in the existence of God. 35. The expression on Schmidt's face was really too disdainful. Anyway, no matter how beautifully Schmidt decorated this matter, in the end it was just to satisfy his own ambition. In order to make his plan go smoothly, Schmidt even destroyed half of the world's population, leaving only those who were willing to surrender to him. Advertisement. So tell me your answer, I have seen our future together, Schmidt said with a smile, looking at Uchiha Madara. But no matter how nice what Schmidt said, it can't hide that Schmidt is a murderer who will do anything to achieve his goals. No, I don't think such a future is what I expected. Uchiha Madara refused with a very indifferent tone. However, Schmidt's power has been weakened too much, so Schmidt can't wait to grow himself again. Therefore, in the face of such an attitude of Uchiha Madara, Schmidt is not angry and wants to continue to fight for it. I think you still have to think about it, those Americans don't take you as their own at all, do they? Schmidt said maliciously. Although I don't look down on Schmidt in my heart at all, I have to admit that what Schmidt said is indeed true, and this is the real situation now. Facing the silence of Uchiha Madara, Schmidt couldn't help laughing happily, thinking that he had caught Uchiha Madara's weakness. Look, you have already made so many great contributions, but they have to launch a Captain America, and everyone has forgotten your existence, Schmidt continued. This is obviously trying to sow discord. It seems that Schmidt does have some brains, and what he said is also the truth, and there is no rumor at all. Still, Uchiha Madara shook his head and said, I don't care about these false names. 99. But 1.1 Schmidt is obviously immersed in his own world, thinking that Uchiha Madara is just holding on, and continues to tempt Uchiha Madara. Whether you want it or not is your business, but they don't want to give it to you at all, don't they? Come to me, I will give you everything you want, Schmidt said with a smile. Then Schmidt couldn't help but stepped forward and stretched out his hand in front of Uchiha Madara, hoping that Uchiha Madara could accept his invitation. But before Uchiha Madara could answer, a voice came from the door, and she firmly rejected this possibility. Impossible. Stop dreaming. Uchiha Madara won't join forces with people like you. Steve came over at some point and said firmly. Chapter 195 The Death of Schmidt Advertisement Chapter 195 The Death of Schmidt. In the face of Steve, who is also a serum-enhanced person like himself, the expression on Schmidt's face is not as bright as before. The moment Steve appeared, the expression on Schmidt's face immediately turned gloomy, and then he raised the gun in his hand again, facing Steve. Originally, Schmidt hated Steve very much, and then Steve said this again, making Schmidt wish he could kill Steve. But Steve completely ignored Schmidt's cold face, and just kept talking about himself. No matter what, he didn't want Schmidt to recruit Uchiha Madara. Don't waste your time. Uchiha Madara and you are not the same, you are just a lunatic, Steve said very firmly. Hearing this, Schmidt burst out laughing and replied with disdain. Are you all in the same boat? Did those people regard him as their own? 95. Although Steve has always been upright and kind, he is not ignorant of these things. Naturally, they knew that the generals wanted to push Captain America out, in order to weaken Uchiha Madara's influence in the army. So O5 was very angry after Schmidt said this, but Steve couldn't refute it. Is there nothing else to say? And you are simply degenerating and wasting those serums in vain, Schmidt said in a very angry voice. In the face of such a crazy Schmidt, Steve didn't want to say anything anymore, he just showed a speechless expression on his face. Probably already seeing the words under Steve's expression, Schmidt didn't say more, and directly pressed the trigger in his hand. However, for Schmidt, who was so uncertain, Steve had long been used to it, and he raised his shield very quickly to block the attack of these bullets. Then Steve aimed at the timing and smashed his shield towards Schmidt with a swish. Schmidt turned around to dodge the shield's attack, but the shield didn't know where it hit and made a very big noise. Advertisement. Then a faint blue light suddenly radiated from the front of the seat, and Schmidt staggered over without knowing what happened. Then, amid the puzzled expressions on Uchiha Madara and Steve's faces, Schmidt held up a cube that was glowing blue. Then Schmidt stared at the cube with very affectionate eyes. He didn't know what he was doing, and suddenly he lifted the cube up. A very dazzling light burst out from the cube, and the light continued to spread, and finally formed a beam. The beam shot straight into the sky, punching a hole in the top of the plane. At this time, Uchiha Madara noticed that the side of the cube that Schmidt was holding had started to be atomized, and the degree of atomization was constantly spreading. Immediately afterwards, Schmidt's entire body was surrounded by dazzling light, and after this burst of light went up, the place where Schmidt stood was empty. It seems that there is no trace of anyone here, and the cube also fell from mid-air to the ground. Seeing this magical scene, Uchiha Madara and Steve looked at each other with doubts in their eyes. What is certain, however, is that all this magic is brought about by that cube. Although he didn't know what was going on, Uchiha Madara ran forward and took a closer look at the cube. But because of the miraculous things that happened in front of him, Uchiha Madara didn't dare to take it lightly. However, the cube thing can be slowed down a little, and now the most important thing is to solve the follow-up things. With the current level of damage to the plane, there was simply no time for Uchiha Madara and Steve to find a safe place to land. So Uchiha Madara contacted the headquarters directly, hoping they could give some support. What happened? How is the situation on your side? Is there any problem? Agent Carter's anxious voice came out as soon as he was connected to the headquarters. Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with us here, Schmidt is dead, and I'm on the plane now, Steve replied very calmly. Advertisement, then I'll give you a more suitable position now, so that you can land safely, Agent Carter said urgently. But it was obviously impossible, so Uchiha Madara hurriedly chimed in. There is no time to land safely, we are going to make an emergency landing. 5. After hearing this, Agent Carter also understood that the current situation was not optimistic, and immediately made a decision. Then I'll let Howard come over to command you, he's the best at these things, Agent Carter said with some worry. This was originally Uchiha Madara's plan, but after looking at the location displayed on the plane, Uchiha Madara closed his eyes helplessly. It's too late, the plane is flying to New York, if you don't make an emergency landing immediately, everyone will be finished, Uchiha Madara said with some helplessness. No, calm down, we can still think of a way, don't worry, Agent Carter said in a very urgent tone. It's too late, now that Steve and I are unmanned, this is the best time. U-477 Uchiha Madara said again in a dry voice. Steve also understood the situation in front of him, and he was a little helpless in the face of such an expression, but he quickly made an unexpected choice. We did it ourselves. Steve's voice was full of helplessness, but it was unusually firm. Obviously, both Uchiha Madara and Steve made their own choices. Faced with such a situation, Agent Carter didn't know what to say, so he could only be silent. The voice on the other end of the phone suddenly disappeared, and Steve looked at Uchiha Madara with some guilty eyes. The implementation of MID is right. This has nothing to do with you and is not your responsibility, Steve said without end. But Uchiha Madara immediately understood what Steve meant, and then Uchiha Madara shook his head at Steve with a smile. It's not just your choice, it's also my choice. Since you wear this dress, you must be worthy of this dress, Uchiha Madara said calmly. In the face of such a calm Uchiha Madara, Steve didn't say anything more. After all, in such a situation, no matter what he said would be an insult to Uchiha Madara's personality. So Steve just smiled and said to Uchiha Madara, when the war is over, shall we go back to Brooklyn? Chapter 196 Knowing the Future Advertisement Chapter 196 Knowing the Future. In fact, this is a very serious occasion, and Uchiha's wave-like face has always been very calm, and whoever sees it will say that he is a very qualified commander. But after hearing Steve's words, a very soft smile appeared on Uchiha Madara's face. Brooklyn is not just a city. That was the first place where Uchiha Madara arrived after traveling through time and space, and Uchiha Madara gained 2 lifelong friends there. And that time in Brooklyn was probably the most relaxing day for Uchiha Madara, and obviously, Steve misses that life very much. Although now Steve has everything, fame, status and power are not lacking, which is enough to make everyone crazy. But perhaps in Steve's eyes, it is far from being happier than being able to go to a bar with his friends for a drink. In fact, Uchiha Madara and Steve are very clear, maybe there is no future. Maybe neither of them could see the end of the war, but Uchiha Madara nodded with a smile. Okay, we'll go back to Brooklyn when the war is over. How is your little house now? Uchiha Madara said with a smile. Even Uchiha Madara's voice was as calm as ever, as if she was going to a feast, and she couldn't see that she was facing a dangerous situation. At this time, there was also a choked voice from Agent Carter on the other side of the walkie-talkie. Obviously, Agent Carter already understood the final choice of the two. Don't forget, there's a dance at the club on Saturday, Agent Carter said intermittently. Hearing this, Steve's face showed a very soft expression, and then replied in a gentle tone. Okay, I see. At 8 o'clock in the evening, you still owe me a full bill, you must be there. Agent Carter couldn't control his emotions, and said while crying. Of course, but I'm not really good at dancing yet, Steve said calmly as if he were chatting normally. It's okay, I still have a lot of time to teach you, it's okay to step on my feet, Agent Carter said in a very choked voice. Advertisement in the end, Agent Carter was speechless, and the only thing he could hear on the walkie-talkie was Agent Carter's sobbing and spit. As the plane kept falling, the signal was also intermittent, and finally all contact with the headquarters was lost, and the walkie-talkie was silent. After he couldn't hear the voice of Agent Carter, Steve took a deep breath and let it out again, a little regret but like relief. Then Uchiha Madara saw Steve piloting the plane while pulling out a pocket watch from his pocket with a picture of Agent Carter on it. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara was also very helpless. But even if Uchiha Madara has the ability to travel through time and space, Uchiha Madara is still an Earth person in essence, and he can't stop the plane from falling. But Steve's expression was so heartbreaking, a feeling of healing revolved around him his whole life. At this time, Uchiha Madara suddenly remembered the little gem that traveled through time and space with him. Although I don't know if it works or not, Uchiha Madara is still calling for the gem in her heart, hoping it can help herself again. Little gem, are you there? I need your help with something, Uchiha Madara shouted silently in his heart. In fact, Uchiha Madara didn't have much hope at all at first, but just gave it a try. But after calling a few times, the gem actually gave Uchiha Madara something to answer. I already know the situation on your side, but are you sure you want my help? Jules' voice thought in Uchiha Madara's mind. Isn't it? He is my best friend. I hope he can be happy. He has done so much for this country. Uchiha Madara said firmly. Regarding Uchiha Madara's statement, Little Gem was silent for a long time and then spoke slowly. But the words are also persuading Uchiha Madara, and it seems that he does not want to intervene in this matter. Everyone has his own set trajectory, all of which are irreversible. Why should you be obsessed? It's better to go with the flow, Little Gem said earnestly. Advertisement in this matter, Uchiha Madara is particularly persistent. After experiencing the incident of traveling through time and space, Uchiha Madara no longer believes in the so-called cause and effect. Why? I came from another time and space. I can travel through time and space. Why can't his fate be changed? Uchiha Madara said stubbornly. Vaguely, Uchiha Madara seemed to hear Little Gem sighing, and then there was some helpless voice in her mind. Backquote. Let me tell you this, he won't die at all, so you don't have to do anything at all. Faced with such a persistent Uchiha Madara, Little Gem can only tell the truth. What are you kidding? You think I'm a fool to survive a crash? Uchiha Madara retorted. In the face of Uchiha Madara, who had to ask clearly, Little Gem really had no choice. And Xiaobao is very clear about himself. If he doesn't explain this matter clearly, Uchiha Madara will not let it go. So in the end, the Little Gem can only reveal some things about the future, hoping to dispel Uchiha Madara's thoughts. Don't worry, he really won't have an accident. At most, he will sleep for a while, so you can treat him as going on vacation. Little Gem persuaded very patiently. Because what Little Gem said was too sincere, Uchiha Madara gradually dispelled his doubts, and Madara also believed that what Gem said was very reasonable. If the ability of using gems can reverse the current situation, Zhao, then Steve will return to the army safely, and he must continue to fight for those people. But for Uchiha Madara, Steve's time was too hard. Captain America is an honor for others, but a very heavy responsibility for Steve. Now that Schmidt has been resolved, those people can no longer fly, and the war will definitely be won. So it's better to let things develop according to the original trajectory. After thinking about it, Uchiha Madara just felt relieved. Therefore, the expression on Uchiha Madara's face was no longer worried, but instead he found a place to sit down, and his face was written with relief. Because Uchiha Madara's line of sight was facing the area where Schmidt disappeared, the cube lay quietly and sweated. It seems that the cube has not changed in any way, and the body still exudes a long blue light. Chapter 197 War Victory Advertisement Chapter 197 War Victory. But they have already seen the terrifying power that erupted from this cube, so Uchiha Madara didn't want to touch the cube. And now that the plane is about to crash, Uchiha Madara doesn't even want to touch these things. Originally, these things had nothing to do with Uchiha Madara. Therefore, Uchiha Madara just looked at the cube with a calm expression, but at this moment, there was an excited voice from Little Gem in his mind. The Little Gem has always behaved very calmly, but now the Little Gem starts to shout as if he has seen something amazing. My God, how could this thing appear here? Where did it come from? Little Gem's tone was full of disbelief. It is rare for Little Gem to have such an emotional leak, and Uchiha Madara also wanted to tease Little Gem, so she did not answer this question directly. Don't you know everything that happened? You don't know where it came from? Uchiha Madara said with a smile. Probably didn't expect Uchiha Madara to say this, and when Little Gem wanted to say it, she was directly blocked in her mouth, and she snorted heavily to express her dissatisfaction. I'm so busy, how can I pay attention to these little things every day? Don't talk about it. 477 inches Little Gem said very sunere. Originally, Uchiha Madara was still sitting on the chair with a calm face, but was she really amused by the reaction of Little Gem? After laughing, Uchiha Madara stopped teasing the Little Gem, and simply talked about what he knew. What the hell is this thing? Why are you reacting so violently? Do you know this thing? Uchiha Madara looked at the cube, and then asked curiously. However, Little Gem did not answer this question immediately, probably thinking in his mind whether he should say it or not. After a moment of silence, Little Gem still talked about the origin of this cube. According to Little Gem's description, it seems that this place has the same origin as Little Gem, and also possesses very peculiar abilities. Advertisement hearing this, Uchiha Madara became even more curious. Finally, he couldn't hold back his curiosity and slowly put his hand on the cube. After noticing that there was no movement, Uchiha Madara finally picked up the cube. But the moment Uchiha Madara picked up the cube, AFBB, it was very clear that a blue light flashed through the inside of the cube. Immediately afterwards, Uchiha Madara felt his palms scorching hot, and when he looked at the cube again, Uchiha Madara only felt that the light around the cube had dimmed a lot. What happened? What happened? Uchiha Madara asked with some curiosity. How is that possible? You actually absorbed the energy inside, which is simply incredible, even if it's only a little bit. Little Gem couldn't hide her shock in her words. Hearing this, Uchiha Madara raised his hand curiously and looked at it carefully, wanting to study what was different. At this moment, the plane began to turbulently, and Steve had already picked a good spot. There is no one in this area, the plane can't support it anymore, we have to make a forced landing, Steve said in a low voice. It's okay, just do it as you decide, Uchiha Madara replied very understandingly. Then the plane began to fall very fast, and then Uchiha Madara felt as if he was surrounded by a sea of water. It all happened too quickly, Uchiha Madara didn't even have time to say goodbye to Steve, and could only smile at Steve. Immediately afterwards, Uchiha Madara felt a warm light surrounding him, because this light was so comfortable, Uchiha Madara couldn't help stretching. When he opened his eyes again, Uchiha Madara found himself in a square, which was crowded with people, and many people were holding American ones. I don't know what's going on here, but it's clear that the little gem must have done it. After all, Steve could sleep on that plane, but Uchiha Madara doesn't have that kind of vacation. Advertisement. Then Uchiha Madara heard a very uplifting voice on the radio, which shouted, "The war is over, we are victorious." Then all the people on the square began to revel, and regardless of whether they knew each other or not, many people hugged and vented their inner excitement to each other. In such a short period of time, Uchiha Madara has almost figured it out, and the current situation is estimated that the little gem has been sent to the time after the war is over. Although he didn't know how long he would stay here, Uchiha Madara didn't want to continue to have anything to do with the army, so Madara gradually withdrew from the crowd. Then I went to a relatively remote small shop, bought a hat, and hid my face under the wide brim. Victory always makes people feel very happy, but life still has to go on, and the carnival brought by victory has gradually calmed down. Uchiha Madara had time to inquire about Steve's situation, and now the news that Captain America and his friend Barnes and himself have all died. To commemorate Captain America's contribution to the victory of the war, the American people even built a Captain America museum. Although the museum has not yet been built, there are still many people wandering outside the museum to cherish the memory of the captain. Uchiha Madara also took a stroll outside the museum and saw the flowers all over the place, as well as the admiration on the faces of the people. There is not only Steve here, although the upper echelons want to put it out in Steve to represent the American spirit, but the contributions of Buggy and Uchiha Madara cannot be denied. Therefore, Uchiha Madara and Buggy in this museum also have a lot of weight. After all, these two are Steve's closest comrades in arms. After walking around the museum, Uchiha Madara had a feeling that the dust had settled, and the whole person was relieved that everything could be over now. "Where are you taking me next? Wouldn't you just let me stay here?" Uchiha Madara summoned the little gem and asked. "I'll take you away soon, but now I'm going to sleep for a few days," Little Gem replied very seriously. "What should I do now?" "Just stay here," Uchiha Madara said speechlessly, obviously not understanding why a gem still sleeps. Chapter 198 Gaining New Abilities Advertisement. Chapter 198 Gaining New Abilities. Maybe Little Gem was a little embarrassed, and felt that what he did was really immoral. So after a moment of silence, the little gem still pointed a clear path to Uchiha Madara, presumably to compensate Uchiha Madara. "Your strength is not strong enough now, so the most urgent thing to delay is to improve your skills," Little Gem said to Uchiha Madara very earnestly. Although it sounded like Little Gem was thinking about Uchiha Madara pouted in a speechless manner. According to the ability possessed by this Little Gem, no matter how human beings are trained, they cannot surpass the Little Gem. Moreover, Uchiha Madara has already developed his physical potential to the maximum, and now he can't break through this limit with any training. After all, there's only so much the body can handle, so Uchiha Madara doesn't know where to start, unless Uchiha Madara can use magic like the Ancient One. But in such a backward age, no one can teach Uchiha Madara this skill. Originally, Uchiha Madara wanted to ask Little Gem, hoping to learn something from Little Gem, who would have thought Little Gem would go to sleep. So Uchiha Madara said speechlessly, "I am just an ordinary human being, how can I be strong, or you will teach me?" Obviously this is impossible. After all, it seems that the matter of Little Gem going to sleep is imminent, so Little Gem was speechless for a long time. Out of the psychology of compensation, Little Gem hesitated to tell one thing, which surprised Uchiha Madara. "Actually, you are no longer a normal human being," Little Gem said hesitantly. Uchiha Madara, who said this is at a loss. "What do you mean? I didn't do anything, so why am I not a human?" Uchiha Madara frowned and asked urgently. "Have you forgotten? You absorbed the energy from the universe Rubik's Cube before, so now you are actually a fortified person." Little Gem said it all in one breath. Advertisement. At this time, Uchiha Madara also recalled that when he touched the cube of the universe, there were indeed some unique places. And it is especially worth noting that when Uchiha moved the universe cube down, the light on the universe cube was indeed dimmed a lot. Thinking about it this way, Uchiha Madara felt that what Little Gem said was probably true. Thinking that he had absorbed the energy of such a strange thing, Uchiha Madara couldn't help but get excited. But soon Uchiha Madara calmed down. After all, the moment Uchiha Madara came into contact with the universe cube, she felt a slight burning sensation in her hand. And now that everything has been restored, Uchiha Madara doesn't feel that there is anything wrong with him, and there is no difference at all from usual. Probably sensing the distrust in Uchiha Madara's heart, Little Gem was particularly angry. "How can you not believe me? I said that you absorbed the power of the universe Rubik's Cube, that is absorption," Little Gem said in a very sunere tone. But Uchiha Madara doesn't want to tangle too much on this topic. After all, Uchiha Madara is still more interested in the energy contained in the universe cube. According to Little Gem's description, the abilities of the cosmic Rubik's Cube are not much worse than Little Gem. Thinking that he was about to have such a terrifying power, Uchiha Madara's heart was hot, and he could not wait to absorb all the energy immediately. But fortunately Uchiha Madara still kept calm and began to ask very disciplinedly how to use that energy. "How could I not believe you? You are the one I trust the most." Uchiha Madara began to instill ecstasy soup for the Little Gem. "So you have to at least tell me how to use that energy, and when I use it, maybe I won't bother you in the future," Uchiha Madara said with a smile. "How do I describe it to you? Anyway, You were thinking about that energy in your heart and transforming it into something you own, Little Gem explained. But this remark is too abstract, even Uchiha Madara did not understand it for a while. However, Uchiha Madara still followed Little Gem's statement and carefully felt this somewhat magical power, but there was no movement for most of the day. 0. For flowers. Advertisement, try it yourself, I'm really going to sleep, Little Gem said impatiently. Anyway, what the universe Rubik's Cube possesses is the power to travel through space. You should practice it yourself, Little Gem said in a very urgent tone. After saying these words, the Little Gem disappeared. Now that the Little Gems have left, Uchiha Madara doesn't stay here any longer and soon returns to Brooklyn. In Brooklyn's house, Uchiha Madara spends every day researching the abilities of the cosmic Rubik's Cube. But after a few days of research, nothing came out of it. Uchiha Madara was a little discouraged, so he simply put this matter aside. The war is over, and Uchiha Madara has nothing to do, but can only hang out in the room, and even took out Steve's diary. Looking at this diary, Uchiha Madara suddenly thought of Steve and Buggy. Steve has fallen into a deep sleep, and Uchiha Madara believes that one day he and Steve will meet again. But what is Buggy's situation now is really worrying Uchiha Madara. Thinking of Buggy, Uchiha Madara's mind comes to the place where Buggy fell to the cliff. I wish I could travel back to that time now, can hold Buggy's hand tightly. At this moment, Uchiha Madara suddenly felt a very violent energy fluctuation coming from his body, and then Uchiha Madara felt a tremor all over his body. When he opened his eyes, Uchiha Madara found himself in the ice and snow. Look back around. Uchiha Madara is quite sure where he is now, which is the train he jumped on during the mission. This is an incredible thing. If other people faced such a situation, they must have been scared crazy. But Uchiha Madara's heart is excited, which means that Uchiha Madara can already use the ability of the universe Rubik's Cube. Although this seems to be just a coincidence, Uchiha Madara is very sure that as long as he practices more, he will definitely be the perfect master of this skill. Chapter 199 Unreliable Advertisement. Chapter 199 Unreliable. Having touched the door of success, Uchiha Madara naturally wants to pursue the victory. So Uchiha Madara kept thinking about the location of Brooklyn in his mind and wanted to teleport himself back to the room. However, the energy contained in the cosmic Rubik's Cube is too huge. Although Uchiha Madara only absorbed a small part, it is already incredible. Therefore, the current Uchiha Madara has not yet fully mastered the ability, and the business is very unskilled. After trying hard, Uchiha Madara opened her eyes and thought she had returned to Brooklyn's room. But there were some embarrassing discoveries, and he still stood there and didn't move at all. This situation is indeed a little embarrassing, but no one around is watching anyway. Uchiha 480 Madara just touched her nose and re-engaged in the connection. It is said that God rewards hard work. Uchiha Madara has such talent, coupled with constant hard work, he has finally achieved some results. When Uchiha Madara couldn't stand the severe cold here, he finally managed to teleport himself back to Brooklyn's room. Upon returning to the warm room, Uchiha Madara first breathed a sigh of relief, and then a somewhat excited smile appeared on his face. Having tasted the sweetness, Uchiha Madara naturally refused to give up and started to keep trying. But after several attempts, Uchiha Madara also discovered a new problem. For example, Uchiha Madara wants to teleport himself to Washington, but after a long time, there is still no effect. At first, Uchiha Madara thought that his abilities were not good enough, but when Uchiha Madara wanted to teleport himself to the place where he had been, he succeeded very easily. Gradually, Uchiha Madara also discovered the pattern. It is estimated that he can only teleport himself to the places he has been before. After all, Uchiha Madara knows the coordinates of those places very well. Advertisement. Although there are still some small limitations, it is already a remarkable ability. After a few days of hard work, Uchiha Madara is finally a proficient master. At this time, Little Gem finally woke up from dormancy, and when she woke up, Little Gem couldn't wait to get Uchiha Madara ready. Wait, make it clear first. Where are you going to send me next? Uchiha Madara asked curiously. But this question seems to have hit the difficult point of Little Gem. After a moment of silence, Little Gem stammered out the real situation. Actually, I'm not too sure. I naturally wanted to bring you back to the original time, but, Little Gem said in a very embarrassed tone. Although the words hadn't been finished, Uchiha Madara immediately understood the meaning, and Uchiha Madara was speechless in the face of this situation. At the beginning, Uchiha Madara imagined countless possibilities, but never imagined that it was because the Little Gem was not capable enough to bring himself back to the year at the beginning. Obviously, according to Little Gem, now it can only come little by little, and every time it advances for decades, it is estimated that this is the case. Although there was still some helplessness, in the end Uchiha Madara just sighed softly and accepted the fact. Forget it, just go ahead and send me wherever you want, Uchiha Madara said with some resignation. In the face of such a situation, Little Gem was a little embarrassed, and smiled a little embarrassedly, but it was still not soft to act. Soon Uchiha Madara felt that he was surrounded by this light, and Uchiha Madara was very familiar with this feeling, and there was no panic. When he opened his eyes again, Uchiha Madara found himself on the street, surrounded by tall buildings that looked very modern. At first Uchiha Madara thought it was the Little Gem who got the energy from somewhere and could transport himself back to the time when he met the Ancient One. But taking a closer look, Uchiha Madara suddenly noticed something was wrong. This place is very similar to the Earth, but the people walking on the street are not the same as the people on Earth. The vibe here is very serious, and basically everyone wears silver and black uniforms. Advertisement. Everyone walked in an orderly manner on the street, looking like people who came out of the army. When Uchiha Madara looked at these people, one of them also seemed to have spotted Uchiha Madara's figure and looked at Uchiha Madara with vigilance. Immediately after this person waved his hand, many people rushed up and surrounded Uchiha Madara, seemingly treating Uchiha Madara as an aggressor. This place is too strange, and Uchiha Madara didn't understand the situation. Naturally, he didn't act rashly, but kept calling the little gem in his mind. "Ah, sorry, I transmitted in the wrong place, we never once." Little Gem's slightly embarrassed voice came out of Uchiha Madara's mind. But it is obvious that the ability of the little gem still needs to be used, so Uchiha Madara did not complain, but just waited patiently. The more tense moments are encountered, the more unreliable Lil Gem is, and these people are already approaching Zebo Madara step by step. And they are already holding their weapons against Uchiha Madara, but there is still no movement from the little gem. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara couldn't bear it any longer, and couldn't help urging, "Little Gem, are you okay? We're finished now." I'm sorry, this is just a small accident." Little Gem also felt embarrassed and kept apologizing. Just when these people were about to touch Uchiha Madara, the familiar light finally appeared again, wrapping Uchiha Madara. When he opened his eyes again, 1.1 Uchiha Madara found himself in a place that was both familiar and unfamiliar. After careful research, Uchiha Madara found that this is the United States, but the United States has experienced development. Although I don't know what the situation is now, but this is a place that I am more familiar with, Uchiha Madara is also relieved. And this kind of environment is obviously relatively peaceful. After breathing a sigh of relief, Uchiha Madara calmly blended into the crowd. Immediately afterwards, Uchiha Madara walked into a small restaurant and chatted with the waiter while eating, hoping to get some useful information from it. Although these questions are relatively simple, Uchiha Madara's conversation skills are still very superb, and no one finds it strange at all. Chapter 200 Strange Woman Advertisement. Chapter 200 Strange Woman. After getting the news he wanted, Uchiha Madara also seemed very relaxed. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara's judgment did not make mistakes, and it is indeed still in the United States, and it was the United States in 1989. The war was over decades ago, and now the United States is showing a rapid economic development, which is clearly an era of peace. After figuring out the surrounding situation, Uchiha Madara felt much more relaxed. No war meant that Uchiha Madara could enjoy this period of life. Thinking of this, Uchiha Madara's whole person became excited, and then he couldn't wait to walk out of the small restaurant, wanting to take a good look at the current United States. But before enjoying life, there is one very important thing to do. The current Uchiha Madara has fallen from the sky here, so it is essentially a black household. In such a modern country, it is very inconvenient to not have one's own identity proof. So after leaving the restaurant, the first thing Uchiha Madara did was to get himself a proper identity. But now the United States has already gradually developed, so many people have tried their best to smuggle to the United States to earn a lot of money. Therefore, it is normal for Uchiha Madara to buy an identity. This has already developed into an industry, and Uchiha Madara has obtained a reasonable identity very easily. After all the worries were dealt with, Uchiha Madara seemed particularly relaxed and started to wander on the street. Little Gem has nothing to do with Uchiha Madara, so now Uchiha Madara is very free. There is nothing that needs to be done by himself. Uchiha Madara has been enjoying life for a few days, eating, drinking and watching movies every day, not too leisurely. Just one night after watching a movie, Uchiha Madara came out of the cinema and suddenly saw a strange woman walking out of the video store across the road. Not only is the walking posture very strange, but the dress on this woman's body is also out of tune with this era, wearing a tight black uniform. Advertisement. Because this person was a little weird, Uchiha Madara unconsciously paid more attention and walked over there slowly. Immediately after, Uchiha Madara saw the woman walking in front of a car and asking the people inside the car. "My name is Firth, I'm from Star Troopers, is this planet C-53? Uchiha Madara heard the woman ask very politely. There was no response in the car for a long time, although no sound was heard, but Uchiha Madara had already imagined the speechless expression on the security guard's face. "Can you understand? My cosmic translator shouldn't be broken, right?" the woman asked curiously. "But, okay, I understand." Uchiha Madara even heard the security guard gulping. "Very good, so you are responsible for the security of this generation?" the woman continued to ask. "Forget it, I'm a security guard hired by myself at the cinema." The security guard replied in a very cautious tone. But this woman didn't come here to chat and talk about everyday things. She quickly stepped into the topic and asked, "So where's the communication equipment here?" "That. Over there." The security guard seemed to be a little scared and said in a very low voice, and then Uchiha Madara saw the woman walking in the other direction. Although I don't know where this woman came from, I have to say that this person is quite polite, and he did not forget to thank the security guard before leaving. But no matter how polite the woman was, the security guard was obviously taken aback and didn't recover for a long time. In order not to arouse the vigilance of this woman before, Uchiha Madara did not go very close, and did not see some specific details very clearly. After seeing the woman leave, Uchiha Madara walked to the security guard. "Who is this? How do you dress like this?" Uchiha Madara pretended that she didn't hear anything, and asked with an ordinary face. One was a person who was full of nonsense and dressed strangely, and the other was a person who looked very decent, and the security immediately made a choice. And the security guard was really frightened before, so the security guard couldn't wait to find someone and talk about it. But Uchiha Madara had obviously just come out of the movie theater, and even had food in his hands, so the security didn't have the slightest suspicion. Advertisement, I don't know either, she's so strange, she said some inexplicable things. The security guard said impatiently. What did she say? Uchiha Madara asked casually. You don't say it's funny, she actually said that she is a member of the Star Troopers, my god, what are you thinking? Security 35 couldn't help but complain. Hearing this, Uchiha Madara laughed in agreement, and then continued chatting with the security guard, unconsciously putting the security guard's words in his words. Immediately after, Uchiha Madara left slowly, and left in the opposite direction of the woman. During this time, Uchiha Madara lived in this area, so he already knew the surrounding terrain. It looks like two completely different directions, but in fact Uchiha Madara detours a little and goes back to the previous phone booth. 480 But because the identity of this woman in the live broadcast class have not yet been determined, I am not sure whether she is a lunatic or whether she really came from outer space. So Uchiha Madara was very vigilant along the way, for fear of attracting the attention of this woman. Because he was very familiar with this place, Uchiha Madara stuck in a blind spot of vision and hid in the corner to observe the woman's actions. I saw the woman took something out of her pocket, manipulated it seriously, and then connected the thing to the phone. Then a magical scene happened. Uchiha Madara saw a green figure emerge from the woman's hand. However, the current Uchiha Madara is no longer the self of the year. After experiencing travel and seeing the cosmic Rubik's Cube, Cosmic Wave Madara is not surprised to see anything. So Uchiha Madara's eyes flickered for a moment, and then calmed down quickly, carefully observing the situation over there. Firth, how are you now? Confirm the code CTC39, the green figure said. GRXV 1600, I'm fine, thank you for your concern, how is everyone? The woman named Firth said very neatly. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Madara has actually believed the identity of this woman, and it is estimated that she really came from another planet. Chapter 201 Aliens Advertisement Chapter 201 Aliens. Basically, the origin of this woman can be confirmed, and Uchiha Madara is more alert because of this. After all, people in outer space don't think it's a good thing to go to Earth. So Uchiha Madara stayed in the corner very quietly, listening carefully to the conversation over there. The Skrulls attacked us, I thought you were sacrificed, have you found Solar? The green figure said in a very low voice. That's not the real Solar, it was changed by Talos, who also mastered the code, Firth replied with a frown. It's impossible, the code is buried in the subconscious. Green's voice was full of disbelief. The Skrulls used a machine to read my memory, and they should have extracted Solar's code in the same way. Firth explained in a somewhat anxious voice. Fuss, where are you now? The green figure asked. I'm on planet C53 now, and the Skrulls are looking for someone named Lawson. Firth replied while observing the surrounding environment. For a moment, Firth's eyes swept to the direction where Uchiha Madara was hiding, and Uchiha Madara immediately became alert and pressed his back completely against the wall. Fortunately, Uchiha Madara's hiding is still very good, and Firth doesn't seem to find anything wrong. After breathing a sigh of relief, Uchiha Madara's expression became more tense. After all, it was an alien who appeared in front of Uchiha. Who are you talking about? Who is that? There were some anxious inquiries over the phone. That's the person I saw. Uchiha Madara noticed that Firth had closed his eyes, and his tone gradually became impatient. Who? Firth, make it clear, the man kept asking. She's a scientist. The Skrulls said she mastered the speed of light technology. I have to find her in front of the villains. Firth's voice has become a little dry. The time is very tight, otherwise more planets will be invaded by the Skrulls. Firth's tone gradually became firmer, and he said to the other side. Advertisement, no, you have already been caught once. How far is this from C53? The man refused with a very firm tone, and then asked the person next to him. However, Uchiha Madara did not hear the answer, probably because it was far away from the microphone, so the voice was not included. After a while, the man's voice came from the microphone. Fuss, you are standing by and waiting for us to pass, don't turn off the communicator, I will contact you at any time. The man instructed very neatly. It is obvious that Firth in front of him has his own ideas and is not willing to accept such an arrangement at all, and some urgently said, no, in case the Skrulls rush in. But before Firth's words were finished, Uchiha Madara heard the voice of a robot coming from the phone. Obviously, Firth also felt a little strange about the situation in front of him, and then tried hard a few times, but obviously it didn't work. Firth was trying hard to get in touch with his companion, and Uchiha Madara was also quickly analyzing the situation in front of his mind. From the conversation between Firth and the people over there, Uchiha Madara had a general idea of the current situation. In addition to Firth, there is another group of aliens invading the Earth, and according to the dialogue, that group of people is obviously menacing. But the signal cut off so quickly that Uchiha Madara didn't get much useful information from the conversation. If you want to get more specific information, it is estimated that you have to ask Firth. Thinking of this, Uchiha Madara made a choice in his mind, whether to observe in secret or go out above board. After a battle between heaven and man, Uchiha Madara finally made a decision. Just when Uchiha Madara was just about to go out, suddenly, a siren sounded not far away. Immediately afterwards, several police cars surrounded the area, and several black men walked down from the police cars. These black men first walked in front of the security guard, exchanged a few words, and then walked straight towards Firth. Advertisement, sorry, May I ask if you have ever seen a woman who fell from the sky, and she pierced the video store over there? The big black man asked. However, Firth was very calm, and replied very calmly. Oh, I remember, I saw her before, she went over there. Firth is acting too normal. If Uchiha Madara hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes, all of this would have been deceived by Firth's acting skills. Then Firth showed a smile to the big black man and said, I still have something to do, I'll go first, and you can find it slowly. After finishing speaking, Firth turned around and wanted to leave, but the big black man didn't give this chance and grabbed Firth's wrist. You can't leave yet, so I have to trouble you to answer a few more questions and show your identification first, the black man demanded. Firth, Star Trooper, we won't print the identification on a small card, Firth said very directly. Obviously, Firth didn't know much about the situation here, and he gave an answer that might be ridiculous in the eyes of others. Sure enough, Uchiha Madara saw a smile on the big black man's face and asked, Star Troopers, so how long are you going to be here? 35. And Firth didn't understand the sarcasm in these words at all, and just replied to himself. I'm here to find the Skrulls who have infiltrated your planet, and if I find me, I'll leave. 95. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Uchiha Madara would have doubted this statement. Money is good, let alone remind ordinary people on Earth. So Uchiha Madara saw these strong men look at each other a few times, and then laughed mercilessly. The Skrulls can copy other people's DNA at will, and they are a kind of deformed race. Firth, who had been explaining seriously, stopped abruptly and looked at the few people who were laughing in front of him. Then Firth couldn't help but rolled his eyes, looked at the group of people in front of him speechlessly and said, God, you don't understand, do you? After saying this, Firth obviously didn't want to talk to these people anymore, so he threw off the big black man's hand and wanted to leave from here. However, the big black man in front of him moved very quickly to stop Firth's actions and stopped Firth's excitement in front of him. So how can I be sure that you are not an upgraded race that can copy genes? The big black man raised his eyebrows and asked maliciously. Chapter 202 Thrilling on the Road, Advertisement Chapter 202 Thrilling on the Road. I have to say that Agent Fury has finally asked a useful question, but I don't want to answer you. 35 Firth rolled his eyes and said speechlessly. Then Firth threw off Fury's arm and dragged his arm very hard, wanting to leave this ghost place quickly. Facing such a move by Firth, Fury even showed a smile on his face, and said coldly, I'm sorry, I think you have to come with us first, you have been arrested. At this moment, Firth suddenly pushed Fury to the wall, and then a laser hit the spot where Fury was standing before. In fact, it should have been aimed at Firth at the beginning, but Fury just stopped in front of Firth. Such a blatant move was really too much, and Fuss reacted immediately, aware of the seat where the attacker was, and then opened his legs and ran over there. At first Uchiha Madara also wanted to follow behind Firth, but Firth was running too fast. Uchiha Madara didn't react at once. Missed the best opportunity to keep up, so Uchiha Madara put his eyes around to see what more convenient means of transportation. Zero just happened to see Fury standing there with a sluggish look, so Uchiha Madara made a decision immediately 490 and just borrowed the car that Fury drove over. So when Fury got into the car with his little brother behind him and was about to drive away, Uchiha Madara immediately opened the car door and got in at once. Just at the moment when Uchiha Madara sat in, Fury stepped on the accelerator, and the car rushed out like an arrow from the string. However, there was such an obvious person in the car, and Fury naturally noticed it immediately, and turned his head and glanced at Uchiha Madara with some vigilance. But because he's still driving, Fury has to focus on the road again. Who are you? Get down quickly, this is not where you should come, Fury said in a very cold voice. Advertisement, but this kind of atmosphere didn't affect Uchiha Madara in the slightest. Uchiha Madara just glanced at Fury impatiently and motioned Fury to shut up quickly. Hurry up and drive, there's so much nonsense. Uchiha Madara patted Fury's seat hard and replied in a very impatient tone. What's your attitude? Do you know that you're obstructing official business? Fury couldn't help but burst out a foul language and shouted angrily. Then Fury turned his head and glanced at the man in his copilot, and then Uchiha Madara saw that the man in the copilot took out a gun and pointed at Uchiha Madara's head. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara laughed in anger. After all, as a well-known and victorious general on the battlefield, Uchiha Madara has not been treated like this for a long time. Although he was being pointed at his head by a gun, Uchiha Madara didn't panic at all, and quickly snatched the gun from the man's hand. Where is so much nonsense? Hurry up and drive, don't force me to do it, you didn't know where I was when I was playing with the gun, Uchiha Madara said with a look of disdain. Although very angry, he is really powerless in this situation, so Fury can only swallow all the anger into his stomach. After Fury was separated, Uchiha Madara ignored Fury and focused on the moving train. Uchiha Madara saw that Firth ran in that direction before, but fortunately, Fury still has some eyesight. There was no need for Uchiha Madara to say more, and Fury was also chasing the train in his car. But there are too many people driving on the road, and Fury can only drive his own car to make away. It was too difficult to drive on this road, and it was impossible to catch the train with a car, so Uchiha Madara quickly made a decision. There's a tunnel ahead, stop chasing, you just drive to the next stop. AFBB, Uchiha Madara said in a commanding tone that he was accustomed to. Although he heard Uchiha Madara take it for granted, Fury was very angry and wanted to refute. But under Uchiha Madara's icy gaze, Fury also silently closed his mouth, and very quietly drove in the direction Uchiha Madara said. No matter what, Fury still has self-knowledge. Uchiha Madara snorted and stopped paying attention. Advertisement at this time, there was a lot of movement on the train, and Uchiha Madara even saw Firth jump to the top of the train and fight with a person. But because he was about to cross the tunnel, Firth let the man run away without noticing. Then Firth opened a hole in the train and jumped in, followed by a tunnel. Uchiha Madara lost control of Firth's position. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara could only keep urging Fury, hoping that Fury could speed up. At this moment, a familiar voice came from Fury's walkie-talkie. "Sir, I'm Agent Coulson. What's the situation now? I'm still in the video store, but where have you all gone?" It could be heard that the voice was full of helplessness. At the moment when the voice came, Fury's face changed immediately, and he turned his head and looked at the man in the co-pilot coldly. And the man on the co-pilot was also very weird, and immediately took out his weapon, not only aiming at Uchiha Madara, but even attacking Fury. Thinking of what Firth said before, Uchiha Madara immediately understood, and it is estimated that this is the scroll in Firth's mouth, and they copied the genes of Agent Coulson. In the face of these delusional people who want to invade the earth, a very cold smile appeared on Uchiha Madara's face. Then, when Fright had some difficulties, Uchiha Madara jumped on the co-pilot and twisted the man's hand directly behind his back. Immediately afterwards, a hand knife smashed into the man's neck, and the man immediately lost consciousness and fell on the co-pilot. When the crisis was lifted, Fury was also relieved, and said something awkward to Uchiha Madara. "Thank you for what happened just now." But Uchiha Madara gave Fury a cold look and said, "Hold your steering wheel, there are too many cars on the road." Facing this, Fury immediately assured, "Don't worry, there is no problem." But just when the voice just fell, Fury raised the steering wheel in his hand with some embarrassment. The steering wheel had been damaged when the fight was just starting, so the car immediately lost control on the road and moved forward crookedly. Chapter 203 Expose Advertisement. Chapter 203 Expose. There are a lot of vehicles on the road now, and then Uchiha Madara felt a very violent impact. Originally, the car had suffered many hits along the way. After the final blow, the car was basically scrapped and stopped directly in the middle of the road. Uchiha Madara was sitting in the backseat and was not affected much, but Fury in the front was not very good, and hit the windshield directly. Then Uchiha Madara saw Fury lying directly in front, and there was no movement for a long time. After a violent collision, Uchiha Madara reached out and pushed Fury. Fortunately, Fury only suffered a little skin trauma, and there was nothing serious, and it didn't take long for him to wake up. Fury, who had just woken up, was obviously a little confused, clutching his bleeding forehead, and looking at Uchiha Madara with some doubts. But now Uchiha Madara's attention was no longer on Fury, but looked at the position of the co-pilot with an inquisitive face. Before that person was still Agent Coulson's appearance, not to mention handsome and compelling, at least with good facial features, but after his death, this person's appearance changed immediately. Now it is completely the appearance of the legendary alien. The skin looks like a green tree pattern, and the overall proportion of the pointed ears is very incongruous. Originally, Fury wanted to ask Uchiha Madara a lot of things, but found that Uchiha Madara's eyes were never on him. So Fury also followed Uchiha Madara's line of sight with some curiosity, and then the expression on Fury's face changed immediately. Fury covered his forehead in a panic, then immediately opened the door and got out of the car. Advertisement. Seeing Fury's terrified appearance, Uchiha Madara couldn't help sneering, and then opened the door and walked out. However, there was too much movement here, and there was another car accident, so the surrounding area was almost a vacuum. There are still many people standing on the periphery, looking at this side with caution and some curiosity. Seeing this scene, the smile on Uchiha Madara's face disappeared immediately. Then Uchiha Madara quickly walked to Fury's side and ripped Fury's coat off. Facing this sudden action, Fury was almost stunned, and looked at Uchiha Madara speechlessly, wanting to get angry but not afraid. But now that the situation was urgent, Uchiha Madara didn't have time to explain too much, so he got back into the car with his jacket. Uchiha Madara moved very quickly to cover the scroll's head with a suit. After all, this matter is too mystical, and if the public sees the appearance of this alien, it will definitely cause unnecessary panic. After seeing Uchiha Madara's actions, the anger on Fury's face disappeared immediately, and embarrassment appeared on his face instead. But this is just a small matter, and Uchiha Madara didn't want to be too entangled in such trivial matters, but instead instigated Fury. "Look for a way to drive these people away, but you can't let them see what's inside," Uchiha Madara said to Fury very succinctly. Although in front of Uchiha Madara, Fury is completely the image of an airbag, but it has to be said that it still has some effects. When the police gradually surrounded, I saw Fury walking in front of him and took out his ID, and then signaled the police to leave quickly. "This is S.H.I.E.L.D. doing business, you hurry up and leave," Fury said in a cold tone. Advertisement. After carefully checking the documents to confirm that they were genuine, the policemen looked at each other and quickly evacuated from here. And by the way, he also took away the ordinary people who were watching. After everyone was cleaned up, Fury walked back to Uchiha Madara. "What should I do now?" Fury asked, frowning. "I want to teach you about this kind of thing. Of course, take this alien back," Uchiha Madara said impatiently. In fact, when he asked about those words, Fury had some regrets, and now that Uchiha Madara was so sarcastic, the expression on his face was even more embarrassing. Uchiha Madara didn't really want to do anything, just pointed to a car next to him and asked Fury to drive that car over. Then Uchiha Madara and Fury worked together to lift the alien into the car and drove all the way to S.H.I.E.L.D. Originally Uchiha Madara didn't want to have too much involvement with Fury, but now the Skrulls obviously want to infiltrate the Earth and finally completely control the Earth. 0. For flowers. Anything Uchiha Madara can ignore, but this matter is closely related to Uchiha Madara itself, so Uchiha Madara can only join in. The most important thing is that the ability of the scroll is too amazing, and no one knows what the scroll has become and where it is hidden. If Uchiha Madara wants to find out all the scrolls by himself, it is obviously very difficult. The only Firth who knows the scrolls well is not yet known where, so Uchiha Madara wants to borrow the ability of S.H.I.E.L.D. After returning to S.H.I.E.L.D., the alien was sent for an autopsy directly, and the staff in charge of the autopsy showed an incredible expression on his face. Point 0. Unbelievable. In fact, people on Earth are made of carbon-based, but its elements are not found on the periodic table. The staff said with a look of amazement, "What do you mean, you talk to me?" Obviously the relationship between the two should be good. Fury hit the staff member on the shoulder and said, "It means that this is obviously not a creature on Earth, and I don't know which alien planet it came from." The staff gave Fury a white look and replied, "This is obviously an alien creature, isn't it obvious?" Uchiha Madara interrupted the conversation between the two, and said speechlessly, "Can this thing really look like Coulson?" The staff asked curiously. "Both of us saw it with our own eyes, maybe what Firth said was true, the Skrulls wanted to infiltrate." Uchiha Madara said to the staff. Hearing this, the expressions on the faces of the two people were silent, and they began to think about how to solve this matter. "So will you join in?" After a long silence, Firth suddenly turned to look at Uchiha Madara and asked, "Isn't it obvious? The Earth is not only your Earth, I also live in it." Uchiha Madara said in a very natural tone. After getting a positive answer, Fury first touched his chin and kept looking at Uchiha Madara, frowning and not knowing what he was thinking. Chapter 204 Strange Officer Advertisement Chapter 204 Strange Officer. Uchiha Madara has long been accustomed to the gaze of others. Without even frowning, she just stood there and let Fury look at it. But what Fury said next surprised Uchiha Madara, and saw Fury slowly approaching Uchiha Madara, and then leaning into Uchiha Madara's ear. "I think you have some familiarity. Do you know Captain America?" Fury asked very carefully, lowering his voice. Although Uchiha's heart jumped, he quickly calmed down and looked at Fury calmly. "Aren't you kidding? Which American doesn't know the captain? He is the symbol of the United States." Uchiha Madara replied very calmly. This answer is obviously not satisfactory to Fury. Fury frowned and wanted to ask something. At this, 4:90 time, there was a sudden sound of footsteps at the door. Hearing the voice, Uchiha Madara looked up and saw a very serious middle-aged and elderly man in a suit and dressed in. Although Uchiha Madara didn't know who this person was, Fury had already greeted him and saluted this person. It seemed that this should be Fury's chief. Seeing the presence of a stranger, Uchiha Madara, in the room, the officer was also puzzled and looked at Fury with a frown, hoping that Fury could give him an explanation. Then Uchiha Madara saw Fury leaning in front of the officer and whispering something. After that, the officer's face was not very good looking, but he didn't say anything more, just glanced at Uchiha Madara and walked into the room. "It's this thing, can he really become Agent Coulson? Don't lie to me." The officer walked to the corpse and said. "Of course, we have all seen it with our own eyes, and he has many accomplices. The situation is very critical now," Fury explained patiently. "Then what are they trying to do?" the commander continued. "What else can it be for? It is always for the resources of the Earth," Fury pouted and said with some disgust. "This thing looks pretty ugly, but it looks pretty beautiful." Uchiha Madara glanced at the scroll and said in a very disgusting tone. Advertisement for Uchiha Madara's comment. Fury agreed very much and laughed when he heard this. "You were right, these aliens are indeed ugly enough. I have never seen such an ugly thing," Fury said with approval. Then when Uchiha Madara wanted to continue talking, the officer suddenly interjected and called Fury to his side. Obviously, the officer was still very vigilant about Uchiha Madara and just pulled Fury aside, without any sound coming out. But Uchiha Madara didn't care about such a small trick at all. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that the Skrull's goal was the whole Earth, this kind of shit in live broadcast class wouldn't let themselves get involved. I don't know what Fury was talking about with the officer center, but after a while, Fury put down the ice pack in his hand and went outside. However, when he left, Fury did not forget to take Uchiha Madara with him. When walking outside, Uchiha Madara always felt something strange. When he reached the door, Uchiha Madara still couldn't hold back and turned his head to look back. Then Uchiha Madara saw something strange. Logically speaking, as a normal human being, there should be a feeling of alienation in the bones of a creature like the Skrull. Moreover, this officer obviously already knew the purpose of the Skrulls, and he should have hated the Skrulls. But Uchiha Madara saw this officer and placed his hand lightly on the head of the corpse, as if he was looking at something very important. His eyes were very soft. Seeing this scene, the seeds of doubt have been planted in Uchiha Madara's heart. After all, the ability of the Skrulls is too heaven-defying. But there is no useful evidence for the master yet, so Uchiha Madara still chooses not to frighten the snake. Afraid of being noticed by the officer in his eyes, Uchiha Madara just glanced at it a few times, then turned his head quickly, and left behind Fury very calmly. "What are you going to do now?" Uchiha Madara asked as he walked away. Advertisement. This is a relatively secret thing after all, so at the beginning Uchiha Madara was prepared that Fury would not answer zero. But I didn't expect that after a moment of silence, Fury actually chose to tell the truth, and I don't know why. Fury actually trusted Uchiha Madara so much. "The chief said that this matter is very confidential, and let me perform this task alone." Fury said the so-called secret with a calm expression. "Are you alone? Then why are you telling me?" Uchiha Madara raised her eyebrows and said speechlessly. Fury did not answer this question immediately, but took Uchiha Madara to a room and sat down, looking at Uchiha Madara with a serious face. It's obviously impossible for me to complete this task alone. Although the commander said that no one can be trusted, I believe in you, Fury said sincerely. Although I don't know why Fury trusts him so much, this unreasonable trust really makes people feel a little moved. Your superior said that no one can be trusted, so including him? Uchiha Madara also pointedly said. After hearing this, Fury was stunned for a moment, and then a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Did you find something? Fury asked suddenly. What I can find, I'm just a reminder, after all, the scroll's ability is really strange, Uchiha Madara said casually. Although Fury really wanted to ask about the situation, Uchiha 1.1 Madara was reluctant to speak, and no one could pry open Uchiha Madara's mouth. Then Fury could only suppress his inner curiosity and began to talk about finding furs. Can you locate where Firth is? Uchiha Madara asked directly. It should be possible. Recently, someone reported that the motorcycle was robbed. According to the description, it is very similar to Firth, Fury replied. It's good to be able to locate the location. Uchiha Madara doesn't want to be like a headless fly, looking for Firth everywhere in this vast sea of people. It's not too late, then let's set off quickly and wait there. Uchiha Madara made a decision very directly. Fury apparently had the same idea as Uchiha, and soon walked outside S.H.I.E.L.D. with Uchiha Madara. Chapter 205 Checking Identity Advertisement Chapter 205 Checking Identity. A car was parked at the gate outside early in the morning, and Fury walked to the driver's seat first, and Uchiha Madara also sat on it. After a relatively long trek, Uchiha Madara finally followed Fury to his destination. Fury parked the car next to a bar on the side of the road and walked in with Uchiha Madara. Photos related to aircraft and aerospace are hung on the walls everywhere in this bar, and the bar's dress is generally rock and roll. Now there was no one in the bar except a middle-aged man. Uchiha Madara found a comfortable seat and sat down, quietly waiting for Firth to arrive. Listening to music and drinking wine here is a rare leisure. Not long after sitting outside, there was a very loud motor sound of the motorcycle, and Uchiha Madara put down the wine glass in his hand with a look of anticipation on his face. Then Uchiha Madara heard the door being opened and Firth walked in. But Firth did not go to the bar for the first time, but locked his eyes on the photos on the wall, and looked at it with some curiosity. You look a little different from before, Uchiha Madara said after Firth walked in. This rock style is quite suitable for you. Fury walked to Uchiha Madara's side and said to Firth. Seeing Fury, the expression on Firth's face was very calm, but he was a little curious about the identity of Uchiha Madara on the side. You look like something is not right, Agent Fury. Who is he? Firth asked Uchiha Madara, his eyes fixed on him. I'm pretty good. I experienced alien invasion, played car chase, and watched the process of alien dissection, Fury said in a very relaxed tone. Seeing that Firth was still tense and did not let his guard down, Fury waved his hand to signal Firth to relax. Relax, I am his partner, although our purpose is the same. Uchiha Madara glanced at Fury and said in a soft voice. Advertisement, to be honest, I never believed in the existence of aliens until the corpse was clearly placed in front of me. Fury has been softening the atmosphere in the bar. But Firth still looked at Uchiha Madara and Fury with scrutiny eyes, and then stopped a little away from them. Although it's not very good, I still want to confirm that you are not made of Skrulls, Fuss said very carefully. The people who appear in front of you now are two Earthlings with 100% red blood, not the two green monsters, Fury said with certainty. I'm sorry, I still need more evidence, and no one knows whether what you said is true. Firth insisted on his own point of view. Okay, what do we need to do, such as genetic testing? Uchiha Madara didn't want to argue about such trivial matters, and asked very readily. No need, just take a small test, the Skrull replicator can only have a small memory, Firth said with a subtle smile on his face. Then Uchiha Madara took Fury to sit opposite Firth, and Firth started to ask questions, while Uchiha Madara and Fury needed to answer quickly. Because the Skrulls couldn't have the memories of the past, Firth asked questions that were more everyday but more ancient. Your previous occupations? Firth asked in a very formulaic tone. Hearing this question, although Uchiha Madara was very calm on the surface, but a huge wave was set off inside. But in just a few seconds, Uchiha Madara had already thought about a lot of ideas. But in the end Uchiha Madara chose to tell the truth. After all, this is not a secret that cannot be told. Join the army, Uchiha Madara said with some pride. When? Firth continued. During World War II, when he retired, he was Rear Admiral. Uchiha Madara replied in a very calm tone. World War II? Isn't this the right time? Although he was an alien, Firth knew a lot about things on Earth, and Jonin couldn't help showing a suspicious expression on his face. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara remained very calm, looking straight into Firth's eyes calmly. Advertisement, aliens can reach the Earth. I just haven't changed for so many years. Is there anything wrong? Uchiha Madara asked of course. Before Fuss had a particularly big reaction, Fury swept all the cups in his hand to the ground in shock. The cup touched the ground and made a very crisp crashing sound. Now Fury didn't have the time to pay attention to the cup, and just put a shocked look on Uchiha Madara's face. Who is your teammate? Probably too shocked, so Fury could only stutter and ask. My teammate? Don't you know it too? It's US Captain Steve. Uchiha Madara said in a very flat tone. Although Uchiha Madara behaved very calmly, when these words fell in Fury's ears, it really caused a very big thunder. At the end of the war, didn't you say that you and the captain died together? Fury swallowed, barely calmed down, and said, there are some things that you don't need to know too much about 490, as long as you know that I am standing in front of you alive. Uchiha Madara replied coldly. Although he was very curious about the situation back then, seeing Uchiha Madara's indifferent expression, Fury closed his mouth very intelligently. Then, Captain in the end, Fury still did not resist his inner curiosity and asked hesitantly. I'm the only one here now, without the captain saying that, do you understand? Uchiha Madara said lightly. Sorry, I see. Fury was still very winking and quickly skipped this topic. Although I don't understand what happened, Firth is not a stupid person. Hearing this dialogue, I know that there is no problem with Uchiha Madara's identity. Then Firth focused his attention on asking Fury, but he didn't expect Fury to be a ruthless character if he didn't choose the state of double watertightness. Fury's experience is also very rich, during the Cold War also went to work as a spy. However, Uchiha Madara is very satisfied with Fury's rich experience. After all, Uchiha Madara doesn't want to have a pig teammate beside him in such an important action. Now that the suspicions of Uchiha Madara and Fury have been cleared, Uchiha Madara turned his attention to Firth. Chapter 206 3 People Cooperate Advertisement. Chapter 206 3 People Cooperate. Our identities have been confirmed, so how can you prove yourself? Uchiha Madara asked directly. That's right. After all, we don't know much about the alien situation, and we don't know where to ask. 39 Fury also agreed. Facing the doubts of Uchiha Madara and Fury, a subtle smile appeared on Firth's face, and then suddenly raised his right hand. Immediately afterwards, there was a very strong beam of light, and at a very weak distance, it rubbed Fury's face and launched it. Then the TV behind him was completely destroyed. Firth withdrew his hand and put it on his chin, looking at Uchiha Madara confidently. Although this weapon is indeed powerful, in Uchiha Madara's view it does not prove anything. This weapon is really powerful, but that alone proves you're not a Skrull. Uchiha Madara looked at Firth with suspicion. This is a photon energy cannon, and the Skrulls don't know this trick, Firth said in a very confident tone. Then Firth put his interested eyes on Uchiha Madara and began to carefully ask about Uchiha Madara's identity. From what you said before, you seem to be a very powerful person, so you must have a lot of power, Firth said tentatively. But hearing this, Uchiha Madara shook his head with a smile and denied this conclusion. You think too much, I'm just an idler now, and I don't have any power in my hands, Uchiha Madara said in a very flat tone. He seems to be from S.H.I.E.L.D. He has more power than I should. Uchiha Madara pointed at Fury and pushed Fury out. There is some understanding of things on Earth, but two complex things, Firth is still not clear. Now that Uchiha Madara has said so, Firth directly pinned his hopes on Fury. Advertisement, in that case, let me ask you directly, what is the Tianma plan? Firth tilted his head slightly and asked directly at Fury. However, this question seems to be very tricky. Uchiha Madara saw the expression on Fury's face changing, and finally just looked at Furs with a complicated face. Can you not be such a mother-in-law? When the Skrull Master masters this thing, it will be too late, Fuss urged impatiently. But for Fury, it was indeed a very difficult multiple-choice question before him, and he was unable to make a decision for a long time. In the end, Uchiha Madara couldn't stand it any longer, and couldn't help but urge. Since we want to cooperate, the first premise is to be frank, and I think it's better to let it go. Uchiha Madara also has some irritability. In any case, Uchiha Madara is also a very legendary figure during World War II, so Fury also admires Zeboben very much. Now that Uchiha Madara has said so, Fury gritted his teeth and made a choice. That's right, but I can't explain it clearly in a few words. Let's go straight. Although there was some embarrassment in Fury's eyes, his tone was very firm. In any case, Uchiha Madara still trusts Fury's character. So since Fury had already said so, Uchiha Madara stopped wasting time and motioned Firth to stand up and leave with Fury. After getting in the car, Fury drove up to the speed, and the Maximum was running wildly all the way. Uchiha Madara was carefully asking Furs about the Skrulls. After all, although Uchiha Madara heard the voice of Firth and her superiors on the phone before, she only understood the most superficial things. So the conclusion is that the Skrulls will copy their genes, become other creatures, and then find a way to occupy their planet? Uchiha Madara asked succinctly. After seeing Firth nod, Uchiha Madara continued, and you are Kree people, a noble fighting nation. Fury, who had been driving all the time, couldn't help but join in and said. That's right, it's Hero, S, the noble battle hero, S, Firth replied confidently with a very proud expression on his face. Advertisement, what did the Skrulls want to do with Dr. Lawson? Fury continued to ask. They think that Dr. Lawson developed the light speed engine in the Tianma project, which is very important, 39 Firth replied indifferently. Although the expression on Firth's face was very serious, Uchiha Madara still frowned unconsciously. After all, it sounded too ridiculous. Light speed engine? What is this? I really have learned a lot, Uchiha Madara said in a helpless tone. Backquote. Is it? Then there may be more things that will surprise you next. A faint smile appeared on Firth's face, and he said calmly. Although I already know the purpose of the Skrulls, then tell me, what do you want to do? Uchiha Madara sighed and asked suddenly. I want to get ahead of the Skrulls and stop their actions. Fuss basically said this answer without thinking, but Uchiha Madara shook his head slightly. I came out of the battlefield, don't try to lie to me, wars in the whole universe are the same, Uchiha Madara said confidently. It can be seen that you are an outlier warrior, so tell me, what exactly did you come to Earth for? Uchiha Madara asked, looking directly into Firth's eyes. Facing such a straight stare at Firth was also very stressful, but he still held on abruptly. I can't tell you right now, but I really don't have any bad thoughts of Mono. Firth lowered his head, his voice a little low. Faced with this answer, Uchiha Madara is not surprised. After all, he has his own difficulties, and Uchiha Madara did not think that he could pry Firth's words out from the beginning. So Uchiha Madara just nodded his head dispensable and didn't bother about this matter. Just as several people were talking, Fury had already driven the car to a very remote building. However, the door of the building was closed, and Fury parked the car next to a machine, and a mechanical male voice came from the machine. This is the government's territory, I hope you all leave here quickly, the voice said in a calm tone. But since Fury had brought Uchiha Madara and Firth here, it means that he was already prepared, and took out his ID and put it in front of the camera. Chapter 207 Archives Advertisement Chapter 207 Archives. I'm Nicholas Joseph Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. I have something to do here now, Fury said calmly. Nicholas Joseph Fury, you have 3 names? Firth asked curiously. This is just a practice, but everyone just calls me Fury, Fury said calmly. At this time, there was also a response from the machine, indicating that fingerprint authentication was required, and Fury quickly put his hand on it. However, the speed of this fingerprint verification is obviously a bit slow. Uchiha Madara and the other 2 people waited for a long time before they got the release notice. Fury hurriedly drove the car in, and it was completely on top of a barren hill. Choosing the experimental site in such a place shows that the Tianma project is indeed very important and cannot be discovered by others. Fury drove the car into a dark tunnel, but the place where the tunnel connects is not simple. Soon the front view was empty, and Uchiha Madara saw Fury driving the car to an arsenal-like place. After getting out of the car, Fury threw 2 493 hats into the hands of Uchiha Madara and Firth. Firth looked at the hats and asked curiously. This is the symbol of S.H.I.E.L.D. after all, not everyone can come in here. Fury explained calmly. At this time, Uchiha Madara had walked to the side of the fence and looked down. Below is a fiery scene, with a lot of fighter jets, and it seems that some major research is being carried out. With such a swagger, he entered from the main entrance, so the person in charge naturally noticed Uchiha Madara and the others. It didn't take long for footsteps to be heard behind him, and 3 men in uniform came over and questioned the identities of Uchiha Madara and others. We are agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., come to investigate something. Facing such a situation, Fury walked out very consciously and handed over the documents in his hand to the leader. I want to find a lady named Lawson, Uchiha Madara asked when the leader looked at the documents in his hand. Advertisement. The leader didn't answer the question immediately, just looked up at Uchiha Madara and the others without saying a word. AFBB. Then after a moment of silence, the leader finally nodded and said coldly, okay, come with me. Soon everyone was taken to a small room by the person inside, but the leader turned around and left, leaving only the 3 of Uchiha Madara looking at each other in the room. After waiting for a long time, there was still no movement, and a sarcastic smile appeared on Uchiha Madara's face. It is said that a friend came from afar. It seems that we are not that friend, Uchiha Madara said with a sigh. But since these people are so vigilant, Uchiha Madara needn't be polite. Just as he was about to open his mouth and let Firth knock down the door lock, Fury stood up a little excitedly, took a piece of tape, and stuck the fingerprints on the tape. After using this fingerprint to open the door, Uchiha Madara took the lead and walked out, carefully exploring the road ahead, looking for the location of the archives. However, in such a serious place, a small orange cat suddenly appeared on the corridor, and Fury stroked the little orange cat with a look of joy and rambled about something. At this time, Uchiha Madara and Firth also found the location of the archives, turning their heads and looking at Fury, who was still immersed in the road cat, unable to extricate himself. Fury. Uchiha Madara called out Fury's name, and when Fury turned his head to look at him, he turned his head slightly. At this time, Fury was finally willing to put down the cat in his hand, and quickly followed. There is also a fingerprint lock in front of the archives, and Fury took out his own scotch tape at this time, ready to use the fingerprints on the tape to get in. However, Uchiha Madara was already disgusted by this cumbersome step, and directly put his eyes on Firth. After getting the approval of Uchiha Madara, Firth raised his right hand and broke the door with lightwave energy. Since there is such a way, why did you watch me pull the tape there before? Fury said speechlessly. Uchiha Madara and Firth looked at each other, a smug smile on their faces. Who dares to steal your limelight? Didn't you feel proud at the time? Uchiha Madara said with a smile on her face. Advertisement. After saying this, Uchiha Madara walked directly to the archives, very quickly found the location where Lawson's archives were placed, and took out the thick answers. This research was going well before, why did it suddenly stop? Firth said with some curiosity as he flipped through the answers. At this time, Uchiha Madara suddenly opened a notebook, which recorded a lot of things densely. But the text is so strange that Uchiha Madara can be sure that he has never seen such a text before. Maybe they think Ms. Lawson may be a lunatic, Uchiha Madara said calmly, and then showed the notebook in front of Fury and Firth. Fury didn't have a particularly big reaction, at most he just thought the text was a little strange. But Firth's eyes glowed, and he took the notebook excitedly, stroking the words on it carefully. This is Carrie's text, and it actually appears in this place. Firth said excitedly, and then began to carefully study what was recorded in this notebook. She's a Cree. After reading a few pages, Firth said in a more positive tone. But she's dead. Uchiha Madara spoke the cruelest reality in the calmest voice, and Firth's eyes widened in surprise. After sensing Firth's gaze, Uchiha Madara stretched out his hand and raised the document in his hand. She tested the plane without permission and it crashed and killed a pilot. Uchiha Madara recounted what was recorded in the book. It's no wonder that the security guards here will be so cruel to us after hearing her name. This is an accident that will cost billions of dollars if you don't say it, Fury added. At this time, Uchiha Madara also turned to a photo and put it in front of Firth. It seems that the light speed engine you're looking for has also been reimbursed, Uchiha Madara said with some helplessness. This news obviously hit Firth greatly. After taking the photo, all the joy in Firth's eyes disappeared. When did the plane crash? Firth asked while looking at the photo carefully. It was 6 years ago, Uchiha Madara replied earnestly. Chapter 208 Eavesdropping Advertisement Chapter 208 Eavesdropping. So who was the pilot at that time? Facing this result, Firth was obviously unacceptable and kept asking. And Uchiha Madara didn't want to give up, so he read the information very seriously. But this piece of information looks strange, and it seems that there are many traces of modification on it. In the end, he couldn't see anything useful, so Uchiha Madara could only sigh helplessly and replied. This information has been revised, and it is of no use. Faced with such an answer, both Firth and Fury had expressions of disappointment on their faces, while Uchiha Madara had a new discovery. But there is a confession here, a person named Mary, she seems to be the last person to see Lawson. Uchiha Madara flipped through the things in his hand and said casually. Originally, Firth should have been very excited to hear this, but there was no movement for a long time. After realizing something was wrong, Uchiha Madara raised his head and glanced at Rouse, and found that Rouse lowered his head and didn't know what he was thinking. Are you okay? Uchiha Madara asked. Yeah. Firth just replied in a low voice, without raising his head. At this time, Fury suddenly glanced at Uchiha Madara and gestured to leave for a while. Although he nodded calmly with the live broadcast class on the surface, he kept thinking in his heart that there must be something wrong with Fury leaving now. So although the expression on his face was as calm as ever, Uchiha Madara had long been vigilant in his heart, for fear that Fury would use some small tricks. After Fury left, Firth still kept his head down, probably felt that it was not convenient for him to move here, so after thinking for a while, Uchiha Madara also left here very quickly. However, after leaving openly, Uchiha Madara used her space teleportation ability to send herself back to a relatively secret corner of the archives. Then Uchiha Madara saw Firth slowly raise his head, and after confirming that there was no one around, he quickly took a red-cased document. Advertisement. After flipping through the capital materials, Firth had a thoughtful expression on his face, and then also left the archives. Uchiha Madara followed Firth very carefully and saw Firth find a relatively remote corner. Then Firth took out the somewhat worn-out communication device, which was probably suitable for communication with the superiors on his planet. Eavesdropping on this matter, Uchiha Madara has long been very skilled, and she nestled in her little corner with a calm expression. I already know that Lawson is a Cree. She has been to the C-53 planet. Do you know this? Firth asked in a tired voice. I don't know what kind of answer the other side gave, but Uchiha Madara didn't hear a word anyway. Because the distance is really far, and this is not like a phone booth, the sound seems to be equipped with speakers. After a long time, Firth said, so did that report mention me? Hearing this question, Uchiha Madara, who had been careless at first, suddenly woke up, and the expression on her face became serious. Because I don't know there are other people here, so Firth threw all his problems out of his head. I found evidence that I used to live here, Firth said in a dry tone. Hearing this, Uchiha Madara's eyes widened involuntarily. This incident really gave Uchiha Madara a great shock, and now the situation is getting more and more complicated. The incarnation of supreme wisdom for me is Marwell. I knew her, and she was called Lawson at that time. Firth explained slowly. This sounds too absurd, and it seems that the person on the other end of the phone doesn't quite believe this conclusion, and Firth's emotions suddenly become agitated. Impossible. I remember very clearly, I have been here before. Firth couldn't help raising his voice and said. Not knowing what was said on the phone, Firth closed his eyes tiredly, took a deep breath, and nodded slowly. In the end, I didn't know what to say, Firth responded, and then hung up the phone directly. Immediately after, Firth left feeling a little excited, and Uchiha Madara followed Firth carefully. Advertisement. At this time, footsteps suddenly came from the stairs behind him. Uchiha Madara's face changed, and he teleported to the stairs below. 0. For flowers. Then he went up and pretended to meet Firth by chance. Seeing that Uchiha Madara suddenly appeared in, Firth was also a little surprised, but Uchiha Madara didn't say anything, just motioned Firth not to make any sound. Although he didn't know what happened, Firth kept his mouth shut. At this time, Firth also heard footsteps on the stairs, and the expression on his face suddenly became extremely ugly. After the footsteps died down, Firth lowered his voice and asked, who are they? In fact, Uchiha Madara is not quite sure who came here, but a little guess can be roughly determined. It is estimated that it is someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. It should be from S.H.I.E.L.D., you follow me? Uchiha Madara answered Firth's question succinctly, then turned his head and walked back. Seeing that Uchiha Madara wanted to go back to the archives, Firth had a puzzled expression on his face, not understanding why Uchiha Madara wanted to go back. What are you going back for? The people from S.H.I.E.L.D. must have been brought here by Fury. Firth was a little angry at this situation and asked indignantly. But Uchiha Madara doesn't have any special feeling. After all, Fury didn't know the identity of Uchiha Madara before. In the face of two people who meet by chance, one of them is even an alien, it is very normal for Fury to distrust Uchiha Madara and Furs. And Uchiha Madara always felt that the officer who appeared in S.H.I.E.L.D. before was weird, and if he didn't take a look, something would probably happen. Uchiha Madara has always trusted his own intuition, and it is this intuition that makes Uchiha Madara a well-known and ever-winning general on the battlefield. Although he was very confident in his own intuition, Uchiha Madara couldn't use this as an excuse and threw the officer out directly. I think the chief of S.H.I.E.L.D. is very strange. Maybe it's the scroll you call it. Let's go back and have a look, Uchiha Madara suggested. Although he spoke in a questioning tone, Uchiha Madara did not hesitate at all, walking towards the archive room as he spoke. Chapter 209 Advertisement Chapter 209 Originally, Firth was very unhappy about Uchiha Madara's move to go back. But now as soon as I hear it may appear here, the expression on the scroll Firth's face changed immediately. Moving very quickly, he followed Uchiha Madara's footsteps, and there was no more reluctance on his face. Along the way, Uchiha Madara walked very carefully, without disturbing anyone, and quietly returned to the archives. I don't know what happened, the answer to the bright lights is that there are many places in darkness. In the darkness, Uchiha Madara heard the sound of fighting not far away. Then he gestured towards Fusby behind him, and cautiously approached the direction where the sound came from. After getting there, Uchiha Madara found Fury fighting the officer in a 4-9-3 fight. However, Fury clearly had the upper hand and fell to the ground, unable to get up for a long time. And the officer had a smug smile on his face, holding a gun and slowly approaching Fury. Originally, Firth was very reluctant to come back, but after seeing this scene, Firth raised his hand without saying a word. The speed of light energy was directly launched, and it hit the officer squarely, and then the officer immediately fell to the ground with some painful wailing from his mouth. At this time, Uchiha Madara had also noticed it, and there was a sound of footsteps approaching not far away, and there were not many people. Faced with such a situation, Uchiha Madara didn't want to waste time here and gestured towards Firth. Fuss immediately used his beam energy to hit a match on it, and Uchiha Madara dragged the two people up and climbed directly, and then quickly left the place of right and wrong. However, when walking up the stairs, Uchiha Madara looked up and found a man in a suit with a gun in his hand pointed at him. Seeing this person, Uchiha Madara immediately became vigilant, and Firth also clenched his fists, but Fury shook his head slightly, and the two sides were silently confronting each other. Agent Coulson, is there anyone downstairs? Uchiha Madara heard another woman's voice from up the stairs. Advertisement faced with such a situation, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent gave a negative answer. No, there is no one downstairs. Coulson put the gun in his hand, replied calmly, and then nodded slightly to Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara raised her eyebrows, and without hesitation, took Firth and Fury and left through the door behind her. On the way, Uchiha Madara mentioned the fastest speed. After crossing the gate, he directly locked the door of the house and locked it firmly. Then Uchiha Madara suddenly raised his hand and spread his palm in front of Fury. For this sudden move, Fury looked at Uchiha Madara with some doubts. What about the communicator? It's better to put it in my hand, it's not a good thing to hand it to you, Uchiha Madara said without hesitation. Hearing this, a somewhat embarrassed expression appeared on Fury's face. But Firth and Uchiha Madara both stared at Fury, and Fury could only hand over the communicator in his hand. At this time, the chasing soldiers behind him had already rushed over and slammed the door. Obviously, this gate could not last long, and it was quickly broken by those chasing soldiers behind, and the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. rushed in. Uchiha Madara quickly found a hidden place where all three of them hid. Right in front of this place, there are some strange-looking planes, but this is the best option for Uchiha Madara at all. So Uchiha Madara reached out and patted Fury and Furs on the shoulders, pointing to the plane with some excitement. The same smile appeared on Firth's face. Uchiha Madara took the lead and ran over to open the door of the plane and sat on it, and soon Fury and Firth also followed. Perhaps he was familiar with such a machine, so Firth sat directly in the driving position, but Fury looked at Firth with some doubts. Are you sure you can get this thing? Fury said suspiciously. Probably, I'll give it a try, Firth said calmly. Hearing this extremely unreliable answer, Fury's eyes showed an unbelievable light. Advertisement at this time, the chasing soldiers behind him had already sensed the movement here, and they held their guns and began to shoot bullets on the plane. However, Firth was just a little modest, and still had some ability, and quickly started the plane to zero. After the beginning went smoothly, everything went smoothly. Firth finally managed to control the plane and left the hellish place. After leaving there, Fury also let out a sigh of relief and raised his thumb towards Firth. But at this moment, Uchiha Madara's face froze, and he couldn't help but show a wry smile. Then there was a stowaway above us. Uchiha Madara turned to Fury and Furs. Hearing this, Ford and Firth quickly turned their heads and looked back, and then they saw the kitten they had met in the corridor earlier. After seeing this little orange cat, a very happy expression appeared on Fury's face. And this little orange cat didn't look at all, and walked over to Fury's lap unceremoniously. After a while of this laughter, the expressions on everyone's faces quickly turned serious, and Firth handed a photo to Uchiha Madara's hands. Anyone you know? When I arrived at Hera, I was already half dead and even lost my memory. This is a photo from 6 years ago, 39, Firth said calmly. But Uchiha Madara saw it at a glance. In the right corner of this photo, the person who showed his profile was Firth.
So you're saying you were with Dr. Lawson 6 years ago? Uchiha Madara asked.
I mean the people who have seen 1.1 their last face, maybe know something, Firth said as he piloted the plane. You mean that Maria Rambo? Fury poked his head and couldn't help but interject. Hearing this, Firth nodded and then asked, so how is Louisiana going? Fly east, then turn right at Memphis. Uchiha Madara, who is still very familiar with the terrain of the United States, replied calmly. By the way, the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the one who let us go. Uchiha Madara suddenly remembered the former agent and asked casually. Coulson, new here, he hasn't started hating me yet. A smile appeared on Fury's face, and he said in a joking tone. Hearing this, both Uchiha Madara and Firth burst out laughing, and Uchiha Madara couldn't help joking. It's going to be long in Japan. Chapter 210 Looking for Witnesses Advertisement Chapter 210 Looking for Witnesses. For Uchiha Madara's statement, Fury didn't mean to be angry at all, and even laughed very cooperatively. He believed in his intuition, so he disobeyed the order. It was a very difficult decision, but this is human nature, Fury said with some emotion. I do it often, but it always gets in trouble, Firth couldn't help but say. I see, otherwise you wouldn't take the initiative to sell you to the Skrull guy. This is not in line with your battle hero's criteria. Uchiha Madara said. As long as he doesn't sue, I won't expose him. Hearing Uchiha Madara's implied words, Firth glanced at Fury and said with a smile. Before Uchiha Madara cooperated with 2 other people, it was largely due to the situation. Therefore, although they are collaborators, the 3 people do not trust each other very much, and they are all guarded against each other. But after this incident, the atmosphere between the 3 of them became harmonious, and many planes were not as tense as before. 05 What cooperation needs most is trust. Now that trust is the foundation, the next thing will be much easier. Firth stably controls the plane to Louisiana. But the plane was also robbed, and no one knew what actions S.H.I.E.L.D. had arranged to hunt down Uchiha Madara and others, so Uchiha Madara was very careful along the way. Uchiha Madara didn't want to go out of his way to resist his human companions until the Skrull thing was settled. And Firth originally had the idea that it is better to do more than one less thing, and directly determined where the southern country of Maria might be. Then the plane landed steadily near there, and the next journey is about to walk. But Uchiha Madara's luck was very good. Before walking a few steps, he found a car parked on the side of the road that no one wanted. Although I don't know if the master will appear, there is always no problem in requisitioning it. Advertisement with car travel. Uchiha Madara soon took Fury and Furs to where Maria Rambo was. It was a simple shed with an airplane under it, and a black woman bent over and lowered her head, fiddling with something on the table. According to Firth, it is obvious that Maria Rambo should know Firth, so Uchiha Madara put the task of negotiating on Firth. Firth first put his head out and carefully looked at the surrounding environment. After confirming that it was safe, he walked out and asked, "Is Ms. Maria Rambo there?" Before waiting for the black woman to answer, the door opened on the plane, a pair of small feet appeared, and then a black girl jumped out of the plane. The girl had a very happy smile on her face when she saw Firth, and then shouted at the black woman, "Mom, it's Aunt Carol." I could hear that the little girl's tone was full of surprise and excitement, and I saw the little girl jumped out of the plane and threw herself into Firth's arms. Because he lost his memory, Firth was obviously a little embarrassed by this sudden move, and looked at the little girl in his arms with a bewildered expression. However, the little girl obviously didn't notice the stiffness of Firth's body, and just expressed her excitement on her own. "Great, Aunt Carol, they all say you're dead, but I know they must be lying." The girl raised her head as she spoke, looking at Firth expectantly. Facing the expectant look of the little girl, Firth could only show an embarrassed smile, and said embarrassedly, "Sorry, I may not be the person you said." Hearing this answer, the smile on the little girl's face would freeze, and at this time the black lady had also stepped out, staring at Firth with surprise. And Firth looked at the black lady at a loss, and the two looked at each other for a long time. In the end, Uchiha Madara did not want to continue wasting time. He came forward and interrupted the two people's gaze. "Sorry to interrupt, this is very complicated, so I thought we might need a little time to explain it to you," Uchiha Madara said, looking at Maria. Although she was still confused about the situation in front of her, after taking a look at Uchiha Madara and Fury, Maria agreed to the proposal. Advertisement. Then Uchiha Madara and others were invited into the room. The atmosphere was a little awkward at first, and finally Uchiha Madara took the lead in provoking the topic. The matter is very complicated, but Uchiha Madara didn't want to go into too much detail, just let Firth briefly introduce the situation. After listening to the general situation, Maria's face showed an unbelievable expression and said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to, but this thing sounds really absurd." "Yeah, it's impossible for an alien to become a human," the little girl couldn't help but interject. "You're right, it's true that there can't be aliens, and even if there are aliens, they can't tell it directly." Fury couldn't help but glare at Furs as he spoke. Although knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s job is to be responsible for these strange things, it is normal for Fury to have such concerns. However, Uchiha Madara thinks that if the Skrull's 493 target is the whole Earth, then ordinary people will know about it sooner or later. So there's nothing to hide, so Uchiha Madara just gave Fury a fluttering glance and then changed the subject. "Don't believe it, little girl, then let her prove it," Uchiha Madara said with a smile, and then made a color at Firth. After seeing Uchiha Madara's prompt, Firth stood up and smiled confidently at the little girl, then walked to the gas stove behind him. I saw Firth put his hand on the teapot, and then a red light appeared on Firth's hand, And then the water in the teapot opened directly, making the sound of boiling water. Seeing this scene, the little girl's face showed an incredible expression. She stood up from the chair and walked over unconsciously. "Wow, this is so cool," said the little girl with admiration on her face. Her hands can be used not only to boil water, but also to do many other amazing things. Uchiha Madara said with a rare smile on her face. "This is amazing. Can you let me watch it again?" The little girl was so curious about this scene that she couldn't help but plead. But the people of Uchiha Madara came to this place not to perform magic, there are other important things.